Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome everyone to today's broadcast of the Kev Baker Show right here on TFRlive.com. Now, just give me 2 minutes, folks. I need to restart my Skype. Something has gone horribly wrong with the Skype. Give me just 2 seconds, but I'm obviously still here on YouTube. A big warm welcome to all of you out there. Thank you for joining me for this second helping of KBS today. I'm just going to bring up Scotty and I will bring up the show. 2 seconds. There we go. We are back. We are live, and let me do that all over again. I want to welcome everyone to today's broadcast of the Kev Baker Show right here on TFRlive.com. And it's not just me here today. You'll all be very, very pleased to know that I've been joined by my very trusty sidekick, and we are going to be doing a repeat performance from today's Safe Space. Yes, Scotty Lopez is in the house. How you doing, Scotty?
I am fantastic, Kev.
Awesome. You all right now?
Yeah, I think I'm good now.
Good stuff, good stuff. Thank you for joining me again today, Scott. The last Kev Baker Show of the week before we embark on our journey, our dark journey down the rabbit hole to the darkest of recesses, you know, the stuff that people don't usually talk about. And it's great to have you here, man, because we had a bit of a stream today. The energies were flowing. We were triggering people left, right, and centre. And I'm really happy to be able to inform people that we will not be triggering anyone. Not right away, anyway. Not early on in the show. We've got stuff to get to before we trigger people. But yeah, it's hard not to trigger people with some of the stuff going on in the world, Scott.
You triggered me, so...
And that's not easy, dude. I take great pride in being able to trigger you, sir.
Yes, there's just certain topics that... I don't even know. It leaves me speechless, and it makes me wonder. It just makes me wonder about the state of humanity, man.
That's a very good way of putting it, Scott. And also today, when we were on the Safe Space, what we were talking about, you had brought up a story which featured cattle mutilations. Yes? Now, it got me thinking because I had spoke about this before on the Safe Space and on the show here. And we recently had the show with John Sumple, and it was talking about the alien abductions, alien contactees, hybridization, stuff like that. And in between the show this afternoon with Scott, the live stream, I don't really call that a show, it's where we chill out and have a laugh. But, you know, between then and now, it really had me thinking because whether it's the cattle mutilations, whether it's the Sasquatch, whether it's any of these, what you would call paranormal kind of events, activity, is there geographical hotspots that are more inclined to experience this kind of thing than others? And the reason I started thinking this was the location of today's story, and it was Oregon, up in the Pacific Northwest region. And that's not only somewhere where you find cattle mutilations, but there's also a lot of talk of Bigfoot as well. Not too far from your Mount Shasta, that's up that way as well, I believe, where you've got one of these natural stargates that the Native Americans talk about. So for me, that location where today's cattle story came from, Oregon, there's something active about there to begin with. So it made me think further afield. And I was thinking, well, these cattle mutilations, they're certainly not confined to the US Pacific Northwest. And I found a story here to begin with. It's not recent, but this isn't time critical because I'm trying to look at the bigger picture here, something to do with the planet itself. And if we go back to June 15th, 2017, we can see that the police are investigating an unusual death after a mutilated cow was found with the face and the tongue removed. Now, this has commonalities with the story that Scott brought up earlier on today about 5 cattle that had been mutilated on a ranch in Oregon. And just to give you the bare kind of basics of this, and if you're on the YouTube, you'll be able to see the the image there. I'm not going to show it too long because it's pretty gross, and it's very typical, though, of the kind of stuff we're talking about. And it says the animal, which is thought to have been murdered, was found by a Somerset farmer who was carrying out a livestock check. And it's thought that the animal died overnight on June 10th. And even in Somerset, police spokesman said, "We're appealing to the public for information following an incident near Charmy Down. During a livestock check, a farmer found one of the cattle deceased, and parts of the animal's face and tongue had been removed with a significant degree of precision. Now, we believe this happened overnight on the 10th or the 11th of June, and this is an unusual and distressing incident. We're keen to hear from anyone who has information." So there's one in England as well, and you can look at most areas around the planet. You'll see that this stuff goes on. In fact, there's another article here from, it's 2016, and it says the shocking truth behind the 100,000 animal mutilations in America's heartland. And just to, not even going to get into this, folks, it's just to show how long this has been going on and how much it's happening. It says Chuck Zukowski has spent the last 30 years plus investigating reported UFO sightings and unexplained animal mutilations at ranches across the Rocky Mountains and Southwest. Now, his investigations have led the Mulder of El Paso to a shocking discovery: a UFO highway running across the United States. Journalist Ben Merrick chronics Zukowski's journey from a UFO weekend warrior to a groundbreaking ufologist in the 37th parallel, the secret behind America's UFO highway. And that 37th parallel, that line on the map, on the globe, and we hear about various lines that theoretically, arguably, carry energy along them. Not UFOs per se, but ley lines in the earth itself, where people who are able to use divining skills, the rods, things like that, you find these ley lines. You can see how in Europe there's a great ley line, they call it, or the Grand Ley Line, where it stretches all the way from England across Europe, and you find some of the biggest and most elaborate Gothic cathedrals and churches on this one line that stretches way across Europe, like I say. So it makes you wonder, what's going on here? Why specific areas have certain things or many different things happening in them compared to other areas on the planet? And we come to Scotland now as well, because this becomes relevant even more in a moment. And there's a story here. A mysterious beast is believed to be roaming the Scottish Highlands, stripping all the flesh off sheep and eating them. Now, before we scroll past this image, let me just say that potentially, I would say this is more likely to have some kind of wildlife animal explanation as opposed to the UFOs. But we can't rule it out because of what we're going to see in a minute. And it says a large cat with a taste for mutton is believed to be roaming the most remote parts of Scotland, stripping sheep from their skin and leaving no trace but bones and wool. Now, I don't know many animals that sit and take the skin off first and things like that and strip it right to the bone, Scott. But in Scotland, as I've been telling people for a long time, we're like a paranormal hotspot, dude. Whether it's monsters, whether it's fairies, whether it's ghosties.
Yeah, I was about to say, yeah, it might not be UFOs, but what if we're dealing with some kind of a cryptid, right? Like a chupacabra sort of situation. You know what I mean? Something along that lines. I don't know. Because it doesn't really resemble anything that a normal predator, you would think, just doesn't have that look.
No,
so,
big time. And that takes me to Scotland, like I say. And we've got this thing here called Scotland's Falkirk Triangle. Now, it's these triangles that I really want us to start thinking about, Scotty, because this is going to become important as we lead people towards something very, very vile indeed, or at least in name, anyway. But it says here, it seems that there are some places in this world that just seem to draw UFOs to them. For some reason not yet understood, these locations are positively overflowing with such unexplained phenomena, and in many cases they have gone on to become noted hotspots for UFO sightings. One such area lies in the country of Scotland, and it is an area steeped in the tale of UFOs, alien encounters, and high strangeness. Now, this is also our designated dark area in Scotland as well, where basically there's no ambient lighting, no street lighting, nothing. It's just night sky to assist us Scots in our search for our little green brothers and sisters. So it says what has come to be known as the Falkirk Triangle is an amorphously defined area in the central Scotland, generally accepted as stretching from the small quaint town of Bonnybridge off to the east of Fife. And Bonnybridge, Scott, that's like our Roswell or something. That's like ground zero for all of this. And then spanning back west to Stirling, although the borders are rather malleable and are often also seen as enveloping some of the surrounding towns and villages as well. Now, the area itself is mostly rural farmland, roaming or rolling hills, moors, and mining villages. Not really much to see typically, but the area is known as an absolute hotbed of UFO activity, and ground zero for this seems to be the little village of Bonnybridge itself, which lies not so far from Edinburgh and is often called the UFO capital in the world. So if we come down here, and I need to share screens with Scotty again, I think. There we go, yep. So it continues here, and it says it certainly earns its nickname, as there are allegedly around 300 UFO reports a year from this one little town, with
Wow.
with 1 in 3 town residents claiming to have seen something odd in the sky at one point or another. And this phenomenon,
300 a year. That's like almost one UFO sighting like a day.
look at
almost.
the size of it. Look at the size of it too. It's tiny.
Wow.
Yeah. So it goes on to say then, this phenomenon can be traced back to at least the 1980s, when some high-profile sightings put Bonnybridge on the map. One of the earlier big reports came from a fire crew who were fighting a blaze in 1989 when a red glowing orb of light allegedly flew right up to one of the fire trucks before shooting off into the sky, after which a second UFO, which this one as intense white light, came down to float over the nearby Loch Elrig. Now, the objects were witnessed by numerous people who all described the exact same thing. A perhaps even more well-known account from the town came from 1992, when local businessman James Walker was driving between Falkirk to Bonnybridge on his way home from work and noticed some strange lights in the sky. Now, Walker stopped his car to watch these enigmatic lights move about in the sky, wondering what they could possibly be. He then continued on his way, but the lights then allegedly formed a larger, star-shaped object that descended to ominously hover over the lonely road leading off before him, and he stopped his car to look on in puzzlement. Now, as he sat there wondering what to do, the mysterious object then shot off into the night as at exhilarating, amazing speed, remaining completely silent the entire time. This report really seemed to open up the floodgates of UFO sightings in the area, and sighting reports began to pour in at an incredible rate. People began to see UFOs prowling the roads outside the town, buzzing cars, hovering in the skies above, and even reported as landing on a golf course. And suddenly Bonnybridge was getting a reputation as being a UFO magnet. Now let's just stop there, Scott, and let's think about this, right? Because here's one spot, one particular location on the planet where we see, I think it's safe to say, a very high intensity and frequency of sightings going on, right?
Yeah, that there tends to be a lot of anomalous activity occurring in this area. So, yeah. And do we know, like, the latitude of where this is located? Is this located near one of these ley line situations or?
Yeah, I think we'll need to check that, and we can check that.
Mm,
We'll check that as this goes on. We'll just take another look at one more or so of these incidents, then we'll check the ley lines. But this isn't the only kind of place. This isn't the only supernatural triangle that we've got to look at today. And most people will think triangles, Bermuda Triangle. Yeah, the Bermuda Triangle's there, but there's more than just one. And it would appear that they, in fact, in some sort of pattern around the planet. And this is where it takes us to something just a little more vile, indeed. Another notable case from here supposedly began in March 1992, when the Sloggett family was out on a walk in the early morning hours. Now, as they walked along, they noticed some strange lights in a ring formation over the moor not too far away, which was enough to spook them into heading back to their home nearby. Now, they would claim that a bright blue light shaped like a football would then pursue them to block their path, and the craft about the size of a house would land right in front of them, after which a door on the craft slid open, and from within issued what sounded like a deep roar or growl. Now, the family ran as fast as they could away from this unearthly sight, and when they looked back, the lights were gone, Scott. That's pretty weird, huh?
wow. That is pretty weird.
Now I'm going to find...
A roar or a growl?
Yeah, that's weird, man.
Yeah.
I'm going to find Bonnie Bridge map. We'll see what line it's on. This could be quite interesting. We'll need to zoom out from here, obviously. Don't even know if it'll give us the kind of...
Might have to hit Google Earth or something.
Yeah, I think I might do it. It even loads up on here. I don't know, we'll go back. We'll have a look here. Latitude. Let's see.
Latitude and longitude.
Let's see. Google Maps. So why do we put the lines on it? Right. Well, we'll find that in a minute, because that's
yeah, we'll find it.
So there's another triangle I was wanting us to look at anyway. And again, we go back to the mysterious universe. And we'll dig up dig up that during the break, so we can let people know after the break what line of latitude that Falkirk and Bonnie Bridge sit on. I think that could be interesting. But we now go to Michigan, and it's not UFOs, you see. We're not just concentrating on UFOs or potential cattle mutilations or one thing. It's any of these weird events, any of these kind of paranormal, supernatural, woo-filled stuff that you hear going on. And we often talk about people that go missing, right? Well, it says here, people who vanished into thin air at the Michigan Triangle. Now, there are certain bizarre realms upon this earth that draw to them mysteries, and they have become quite a focus for the world of the paranormal. One such place lies within the United States and is ground zero for all manner of strange phenomena, including UFOs, missing planes and ships, and indeed, vanished people. Now, the mysterious locale, it's not the Bermuda Triangle we're talking about here. It's known as the Michigan Triangle, and it is an area said to stretch from Ludington to Benton Harbor in Michigan to Manitowoc, Wisconsin, and since at least 1891, it has been the site of all manner of strange disappearances of boats and planes, and has also become an area known for its UFO activity and other various strange phenomenon. Now, the place has become almost legendary among paranormal investigators, with the ships and aircraft that have vanished here drawing comparisons to the more famous Bermuda Triangle. But it's not only these vessels that have seemingly disappeared into thin air. because the Michigan Triangle has its share of people who seem to have just stepped off the face of the earth as well. Now, this is sounding
Wow.
like we're getting into this whole missing 411.
I was about to say this looks like it ties into the whole missing 411 thing, man.
I
With
think,
these
Scott,
strange.
I think with conversation we had earlier, what we've already seen so far today, I think we may have to start looking at these as definite interdimensional hotspots. I think that might be the best kind of catch-all term to put on these triangles, because it's not confined to just one supernatural Ooga Booga event. There's many different things that all fall into the Ooga Booga events.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think we're talking about some kind of energetic vortex or portal situation. Um, we talk about the Bermuda Triangle. We talk about was it the Dragon's Triangle? That's the Pacific basically version of it. You have these strange triangles that are located over land. I think Siberia has one.
Well,
Um,
that takes us to where I'm going then, because there are various triangles out there. And all of these triangles, or at least 12 of them, are said to make up something so heinous, so evil, and such a vile vortex. I'm not making it up, folks. It's a thing. It says here a vile vortex is any of the 12 purported particular geographic areas arranged in a pattern around the Earth. And the term was coined not by Kev Baker, but by Ivan T. Sanderson, who catalogued them as the sites of unexplained disappearances and other mysterious phenomena. Now, Ivan T. Sanderson asserts that 12 vortices are situated along particular lines of latitude. 5 of the vortices are on the same latitude to the south of the equator, and 5 are on the same latitude to the north. And the other 2 are the north and south poles. And it says the idea has been taken up by other fringe writers who have argued that these vortices are linked to subtle matter energy, ley lines, or electromagnetic aberration. Now, the phenomenon is addressed as geomagnetic or geometric patterns in the book Anti-Gravity and the World Grid. So Paul Begg, in a series of articles for the Unexplained magazine, criticised the methodology of writers on the subject of unexplained disappearances. He checked original records of the alleged incidents. Often, he found the ships which were claimed to have mysteriously disappeared actually had a mundane reason for their loss. For instance, the Rifuku Maru, and some were lost in storms, although the Vortex writers would claim that the weather was fine at the time. In other cases, locations of losses were changed to fit the location of the vortex, and sometimes no record was found of that ship to have ever existed, and they can try and rubbish these locations all they want, but here they are. We have got the Bermuda Triangle, the Algerian megaliths, the Indus Valley. It is in the city of Mohenjo-Daro, Pakistan. We have got the Devil's Sea, south of Japan, the Hamakulia, butchered that again, Scott, volcano in Hawaii.
You're pretty spot on with the Hamakulia volcano.
Yeah, and we've got the South Atlantic anomaly, which we're going to take a look at, because there's maybe something magnetic, something energetic, and it might tie in with what I was talking about with Danny the other night on the show. Funny how things all link together when they seemingly don't. But we continue because we've got the Great Zimbabwe. Now, I'd never heard of that one, Scott, the Great Zimbabwe Triangle. I'd never heard of the Wharton Basin Triangle. And it's a marine area off the northeast quarter of the Indian Ocean. We've got the Loyalty Islands, and it's one of the 3 administrative subdivisions of New Caledonia, encompassing the Loyalty Islands archipelago in the Pacific, located northeast of the new, I lost it there, Grande Terre, right? So I hadn't heard of that one before. Easter Island, We've all heard of Easter Island and the woo down there. North Pole, South Pole, and like I say, all of it, or all of them, part of the vile vortex. Join us after the break for more as we continue down this particularly scary rabbit hole. There we go. It's not a scary rabbit hole, folks. It's a vile rabbit hole. It stinks.
As we descend farther down the vortex.
Yes.
Click that map down there at the bottom of the...
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, that'll give you an idea of like kind of the grids. And you can see how they're spaced out.
Yep.
5 in the northern. Yeah. You know, and I think there's probably even more. I think there's just locations pockmarked across the globe that these strange anomalies and weird things occur. Also think there's areas of the globe where like maybe the magnetic field is more concentrated than in other areas, right? So, I mean, it would obviously make sense that the North and South Pole would probably have some weird magnetic anomaly, right? Because if you look kind of at the representation of the magnetic field of the Earth, right, you see that all of those magnetic lines, all of those magnetic, the magnetic field, it's concentrated coming out of the North Pole and the South Pole, right, and then it spreads out around the planet. I think that I think there are areas of the planet where some of these magnetic lines sort of kind of concentrate and could cause some of these weird anomalies and these weird vortexes. Because I mean, we really don't understand magnetics, you know, in the grand scheme of things. The field of electromagnetics and the study of it, it's still, you know, science is still trying to figure out what effect magnetics has on a lot of things, and you know, what kind of quantum effects do magnetics, you know, electromagnetic fields have on stuff. And I just think that this is an area of science and research that is still relatively, there's so many unknowns when it comes to that. So I just think there's areas of the planet where you have these magnetic fields that are concentrated and doing weird things, and maybe that could explain some of these weird anomalies. You know, maybe they're opening up natural sort of portals and vortexes, and you know, it's where you get your little interdimensional sort of activity and, you know, weird things going on. So I don't know, man.
Exactly, dude. And we'll go back here because we never really got into these disappearances either. You know, so this is the Michigan Triangle. Now, I get this doesn't appear on the list of the vile vortexes, but I think that's really just a really loose and fast kind of list. And I think, you know, if we can just accept that there are certain locations around the planet, whether they form some really cool pattern or not, I don't know. But let's take a look at what's going on in Michigan, right? Because this is a tale of one of the strangest disappearances on record in the area. Revolves around a young man named Stephen Kubacki, who in February 1978 was a student of Germany at the time, or student of German, sorry, at the time, and he decided to take a ski trip to the Lake Michigan area in the USA in February of that year. Now, he set off in good spirits, and there was nothing to indicate that anything was amiss, but Kubacki would not come home as scheduled. A search would be launched shortly after, but all that could be found were the missing man's skis and the poles on the shore of a frozen lake, as well as a set of footprints thought to be his, which oddly seemed to abruptly stop at the edge of the lake. Now, of Kubacki himself there was no sign, and the whole scene gave an impression that he had just walked out to that spot and evaporated into thin air. Now, oddly, the following day, the man's missing backpack would show up right in the centre of an area that had already been extensively searched, deepening the mystery of it all. There was no further clues, no hints as to what had become of Kubacki, and he was largely thought to have died out in the wilderness, perhaps having fallen through the ice of the lake to drown. But things would take a sharp right turn into the truly bizarre on May the 5th, 1979, when exactly 15 months after vanishing, he suddenly appeared at his parents' doorstep, seemingly dazed and confused, but otherwise in good health. Now, of course, he was questioned extensively on what had happened to him, but bizarrely, he could not remember much of where he had been. And indeed, he showed very little awareness that much time had even passed.
Ooh.
What he could remember would push the case further into the fringes of the weird. I thought it was weird enough already, but this is a pretty cool woo. It says Kubacki claimed that he lost consciousness at some point during his hike at Lake Michigan, and when he had woken, he was lying in a field at a place called Pittsfield, a full 700 miles from where he had started. What made it all the stranger was that he had been dressed in unfamiliar clothes that weren't his, and next to him, he had a bag that wasn't his, filled with maps he did not recognise. After this, Kubacki would refuse to comment on his experiences, and it had never been adequately explained. Now, while this was an earlier account of a vanishing in this so-called Michigan Triangle, it is not the only one by a long shot, and such cases have been reported all the way up into recent years. One of these is the mysterious disappearance of 30-year-old Christopher Hallex, who was well known as a seasoned and experienced outdoorsman, very familiar with the terrain and the area. Now, on March 17th, 2004, Hallex told everyone he was heading up to his remote cabin near the Tachimenon.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a bad one.
Yeah. Tachimenon.
There we go. Falls State Park. But he never arrived there. His concerned family soon reported him missing, and a search was carried out by the Chippewa County Sheriff's Department. Now, they were able to follow his snowshoe tracks for some time before they just suddenly stopped on the edge of a tangle of wooded swampland. Sound familiar? It is considered very odd because the missing man was such an experienced outdoorsman to the point that he even set up stashes of supplies and food throughout the area in the event that he ever got lost. But none of these had been touched except for one, which seemed to have been rifled through with nothing actually taken. Its significance in the vanishing unknown. Now, there was also found a spent shell casing from the man's gun, but it was also a mystery and unable to be connected to anything. Hallex's has not been seen since. It was the summer of 2008, and there was a rather odd vanishing from the exact same area of Hallex's vanishing, when 73-year-old Joe Cluley and his dog Chip seemed to have walked off the face of the earth. Now, Cluley had come from Florida with his wife, Lorraine, to spend the summer at their cabin at the Higgins Lake area of Michigan, along that weird place named River, on July 13th, 2008. He drove up the trail in the Tachimenon Falls State Park to go hiking along with his beloved Chip. Now, along the way, he called his wife and told her he'd be back by 9 p.m. that evening, but you guessed it, he never arrived. Now, when he was reported missing and police came to investigate, it was found that his van was unlocked and the keys were left inside, something that he would have been unlikely to do, and which suggested he had made it back to the vehicle. What happened after that was anyone's guess. A massive search operation was launched, scouring 10,000 acres for miles around. Well, you'd scour 10,000 acres for miles around. Well, obviously, if you're scouring 10,000 acres. What? But no clue of where the man or his dog had gone could be found. Then on August the 1st, the dog Chip would inexplicably appear at the cabin, undernourished, but alive and none too worse for wear. Unfortunately, the dog could obviously not elaborate on what had happened to Cluley himself, and he remains missing. and he has seemingly vanished into thin air. That's another weird one, dude. Especially in the same place as the other one.
Yeah, this is definitely some missing 411 stuff we got going on here. Um, I don't know what to make of this, man. You know, it's so bizarre to just like see these people vanish, and you just got to wonder what happened to them.
Somebody in the chat room here, Taquam Anan Falls. I like that. That helps me breaking it down like that. Taquam Anan Falls. Yes.
Yeah, I was about to say it because it's a Native American word, you know. So I was kind of looking at it, Taquamanan.
Yeah, pretty cool. So let's see, right? There must be more here. Yep. Coming right after this vanishing. So after Cluley vanished, it says on August the 4th, 2008, a 35-year-old Derek Hennigan headed off to meet his pregnant girlfriend at a wooded area near Newbury, planning to meet up at a deer hunting blind in the trees. He is known to have started his walk to the meeting spot, but he would never show up. His increasingly worried girlfriend was getting no brown chicken, brown cow that night, waiting for quite some time before notifying authorities. It would end up being assumed that Hennigan had met up with some sort of foul play, as he had been thought to have been involved with unsavoury characters, but no trace of him has ever been found. Another vanishing in the area is more recent. In the summer of 2013, 2-year-old Amber Rose Smith vanished from right in front of her home in Newaygo County, Michigan. Now, according to the father, he had been watching her play in the family's two dogs, or with the family's two dogs, when he stepped inside for a moment to relieve himself. Now, when he had gone back outside, she was nowhere to be seen and would not respond to her name being called. Every parent's worst bloody nightmare, that. The dogs appeared not long after without Amber. Now, an intensive search involving hundreds of volunteers and emergency workers was launched, but to no avail. And the next day, she was found around 2 miles from her home, standing in the middle of the road that had already been searched and staring into space. She was unable to express what had happened to her, but seemed to definitely be in a state of shock and disorientation. It was odd, since this was a 2-year-old girl, and she had somehow managed to navigate her way through thick wilderness in frigid temperatures that had gripped the area that night. One sheriff named Brian Boyd said of the weird incident, "It's hard to imagine how a 2.5-year-old can survive that distance through the woods with that kind of temperature. There's some that aren't convinced she walked the entire distance. Maybe she was dropped off. Those aren't things we might have to determine, or those are things we might have to determine in the future. And there are still things we do not have an answer or explanation for, and Amber is either unable or unwilling to elaborate further. The explanations for the vanishings have been looked at here are varied. For some, this is evidence of insidious paranormal forces plucking people away to unknown fates for reasons we will never fathom and were perhaps never meant to. And for others, this is all indicative of people simply getting lost in the woods. Yet, how do you explain cases like that of Kubaki, where a whole year of his life had gone missing, or come to terms with the odd clues that often orbit these disappearances? There's no way to know, and such cases merely add to the strange mystery that is the Michigan Triangle. And Scott, I think when it comes to these kind of things, if you have one of these areas, one of these hotspots, you can't just say it's all UFOs. You can't say it's a case-by-case basis, right?
Yeah. You know, and I think, you know, in some of these cases, remember you had brought up the story, I think it was these, it was on Reddit. I think it was called The Trap or something like that.
Yeah, dude. The guy that got plucked out the hand.
Yeah. Remember the guy who said he walked through what appeared to be a gateway or a vortex, and the whole area around him changed. You know, he was walking in just like a regular wooded area, right? I think he was up in the Northwest, the Pacific Northwest.
He
And then
was, dude. Yep.
walked through what appeared to be some kind of a portal, and next thing you know, he was standing in a place that was like a jungle environment, and the entire atmosphere and everything was different. And he like freaked out and went back the other way, and he basically exited the vortex. Sometimes wonder if like these people are going out into these areas and they just happen to accidentally stumble upon one of these. They walk through and then they never find their way back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they just end up in some other realm or something like that. Or maybe they're there for a while, right? Or and then they end up finding their way out. Like this guy, you know.
I tell you,
Who knows
Scott,
how
this makes
long.
me wonder if sometime in the future, the near future maybe, somewhere some air traffic controller is sitting there, and all of a sudden on his radar, bloop, some new call sign appears on his screen, and it's got the tail indicator MH370. And when those people land, they'll land. They'll just land, Scott. They'll think, "Car, that was cool. Bit of a bumpy ride, bit of turbulence." They get off the plane, and they don't think anything's happened, dude.
Yeah, I mean that's the plot of the show Manifest, right? And you could obviously tell that that Manifest sort of used MH370 as sort of the inspiration for the show. I think plane goes missing, and then yeah, I mean that they end up landing 5 years later, not even realizing that they were gone. You know, and I like to entertain the theory because you know there's a lot of different theories out there, and so I like to try to kind of maybe come up with some of my own. You know,
Yep.
think outside the box, and I always like to entertain the theory that they were hit by a blue jet that was discharged from the top of a thunderstorm. For those of you out there who don't know what a blue jet is, it's basically a plasma discharge that comes out of the top of a very strong thunderstorm. You have red sprites and blue jets are way more powerful. They release massive amounts of energy into the ionosphere, you know, into the atmosphere. And you know, we don't understand them. Science doesn't really understand them. They're a atmospheric phenomenon that it's very hard to research them. They're very rarely observed. And so what kind of effect would that have on something? Like if you were to just be unlucky enough, you know, because MH370 was trying to navigate around thunderstorms. Mm-hmm. That's a fact. It was very stormy in that area, and they were trying to navigate around them. And in a lot of cases, these planes will gain altitude and they'll just fly over a thunderstorm. Yeah, because if you're flying over the top of it, then it's not going to affect you in any way, really, unless you're in the cloud. But if you were to have a blue jet plasma discharge come out of the top of the cloud and hit your plane, who knows what that would do? Was that so much of an energy release that it essentially folded space and time? You know, what kind of quantum effects does a massive energy discharge like that have? And so maybe that plane was just blipped out of existence. Maybe it was blipped into another dimension.
Oh,
maybe
I think it got blipped out of existence right around the time it got within firing range of Diego Garcia.
The old Diego Garcia.
Yeah, I go for the Diego. I don't go for the fact they landed and things there. I think it got far too close to a sneaky beaky military facility And much like we were saying happened or might happen with the Area 51 getting stormed, I think it got turned into aviational pink mist. I hate to say that, but any plane that's like off its or it's deviated off a flight plan, it's turned off its like trackers and things. No, that's got smells of something bad going down, Scott. You need to take action, dude.
Come on, Kev. Come on, Kev. You know it was Kim Jong-un. He hijacked the plane.
Somebody's asking what we think about the electric universe. Oh, Robin, you see, you need to catch up in the archive. Yeah, we're big into the electric universe, aren't we, Scott? We're definitely into that. Two proponents. We wear our electrical universe hats.
Yes, I like to dabble in the electric universe. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Not only that, they can recreate things that we observe out there in the universe. They can recreate it with plasma physics. Something you'll be struggling to do with, gravity and the effects of dark matter and energy and all this other stuff they tell you holds these galaxies together. I'm just saying, Scott, in the name of science, really, it all boils down to whether you can reproduce things in the lab. And when it comes to the electrical universe, boys, at least they can back up what they're talking about.
Yeah, and, maybe this plays into the whole vile vortex situation.
The vile vortex. Right. What a brilliant name for a place, though, isn't it? And it says here, in the dramatized TV episode, The Devil's Graveyards. Now, I bet you stills in that. By the History Channel, the phenomenon is explored as a result of magnetism, also citing Sanderson and a variety of other scientific sources. The show attributes a pattern of violent animal behavior and global warming to vile vortices. It was the vile vortices' fault. Make those interdimensional. See if you make Sasquatch pay a tax to come over here into our realm.
I was about to say, tax the vile vortexes.
And it's based on magnetic changes in the Earth's rotation, with the vortices having been possibly created or exasperated by intelligent means. Are they indicating and hinting that maybe, just maybe, the aliens wired us up for these vortices, Scott?
I don't know.
Maybe the cosmic universal intelligence that's out there.
I definitely do believe, though, that magnetics have a lot to play into this. Ley lines and stuff like that. Energy fields. I don't know. Very interesting.
Definitely magnetics plays into it. One of those other places that was mentioned there, the South Atlantic anomaly. And this is a very kind of much spoken about area on the planet where you do have weird magnetic woo going on. It says an area where the Earth's inner Van Allen radiation belt comes closest to the Earth's surface. Now, not to be mistaken for the very overly hyped Van Allen radiation belts that are out there in space, but this is another one. And it dips down to an altitude of 200 kilometers, 120 miles, and this leads to an increased flux of energetic particles in this region and exposes orbiting satellites to higher than usual levels of radiation. So I was listening to Suspicious Observers, and he was explaining it best. If we think of the North and the South Poles, and yes, the magnetic poles are wandering, well, when you see where they're wandering towards, it turns out this area here, Scott, it's absolutely at the antipodal of the direction that the poles are wandering in. So it's the direct opposite side of the planet. And he explains that the magnetic field at that point, the furthest away point from that, and he shows it all in a video. We can maybe take a look at it. But because it's so weak there, you do have more radiation coming in from space. There is anomalous behavior around there, and it's pretty weird, dude. Maybe we need to look to that as an example of what might happen when the shields go down, or if the shields were to go down.
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting, and you got to wonder if the South Atlantic anomaly plays a role in the pole flips, right? Because they wander towards that direction, and
it's very connected, Scott. That's what suspicious observer shows. He shows where they're wandering to and how this is straight through. I even rhymed it on the way out. We'll be back for hour number 2 to continue the woo. Don't go anywhere, folks. Do, 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 do. Yay, we're there. Yes.
Hey, Kev, you were turning into an MC there, man. Everything was starting to rhyme towards the end.
It's a poet. I know it. Nah, I don't think I'll be rapping for Chris Geo anytime soon. Definitely don't have it, dude. I don't have it. Don't have it.
Kev Baker, the lyrical undertaker.
Oh, I like it. I like that. I like that. Yes. Indeed. So we hope you're all enjoying this, folks. I hope you've enjoyed it so far. Because you're about to get triggered after the break. Oh, yes, indeedy. Here it comes. Yes, we're about to go from the good woo into the oh my word. People are about to get absolutely triggered. Somebody sent me something here.
You know, Kev, being triggered once today was already enough, but...
I know, but I've got more. It's sublimely ridiculous. It truly is. And somebody, John Fuller Project, the man behind the mask, awesome masks. But he was talking, I think you've mentioned this to me before, Scott. It's the program on the Travel Channel, Strange World. I think you've mentioned that to me before. No?
The
Travel Channel, yes.
Maybe. I don't know if it's called Strange World.
It's a new series. They do episodes like this. Yeah.
Really?
Well, it sounds like our kind of program.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to check that out then.
Yeah. I'm not sure if that's the one with the Spock. Like the Spock from the new. He was in Heroes as well.
That's In Search Of.
Right, that's right. Yeah.
Which is really good too, because remember the old In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy. In fact, they just did an episode of In Search Of talking about Nessie.
Well, somebody says it's so funny when I get triggered. You should have been here earlier, Mammoth. We were talking about man ponds. Yeah. Hey, equality. Dudes have periods too. Solidarity with our sisters. I don't know, Scott. I've got a bit of a sore head. I might need to... My fallopian tubes are aching, man. They're in knots. And I sympathise with you, honestly. Will you rub something on my belly later to make it all better? I would rub something on your belly if you asked me to. Oh, Anne's getting the hump. She is feeling it. You can come and take our clothing and our makeup, but never take our period, Scott. This is something that women want to hold on to. Girls, don't worry. I want you to keep a hold of them. It's not for me. It's not for Scott.
Just grab your man pawn and
make sure the mouse tail isn't showing though, because that's definitely a no-no. I don't care if you're going to go down that road. At least make sure you keep that hidden. Come on, have some self-respect, man.
All I know is that if you're a man and you're dripping blood from an orifice,
get a doctor. Get a doctor or a vet.
Probably not a good sign, and I'm pretty damn sure it's not a period.
Hey,
experiencing
Scott, we don't need no years of like medical training to diagnose that this is nothing menstrual about this.
If you experience anal leakage, please consult a trained medical professional.
Dear me. We may be joined by Joe Joseph. I don't know. He may join the proceedings. You know what he's like. He's elusive as our Joe. There we go. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Hour number 2 of today's Kev Baker Show. I tell you what, Scott, that was some quite cool impromptu woo. We had a very fiery conversation earlier on today, and one might have expected that we would probably have just swung right into the same topics right off the bat tonight. But I felt we needed to give people a little time to simmer down, Scott, because today's talk of man ponds, yes, tampons for men, it seemed to get people a little hot under the collar. And surprising to me, it seemed to trigger women more than it did men. A phenomenal kind of psychological effect it had.
Yeah, I mean, as it should. As it should. I mean, the audacity. The audacity of these people to suggest that, oh, men can have a EMS too, it's that time of the month.
But it's all about equality, Scott. Well, it's all about equality. And as we showed earlier on today, the University of Wisconsin, Madison, and University of Minnesota, Twin Cities, and Brown University.
And I was right. I was right about this, about why they did this particular one. It was to address the female that transitioned to a man.
Yeah, well, for people out there, the headline is tampons in the men's room. It's just a small part of menstrual equality, baby, says the campus activists say. So this was to pander to somebody who had transitioned, Scotty, yeah?
I believe so. If you scroll down, I think it says to provide free menstrual products in some men's and gender-neutral restrooms in order to be more inclusive of transgender students. So that's what that is. But the ridiculous commercial that we watched, or the ridiculous ad that we watched earlier, that is the one that is pandering to, well, men need to realize the pain that women go through, and so they need to experience the menstrual cycle themselves. And
we'll just take a listen to the first part of this to let people know where we're coming from here. You've got a little boy sitting on the toilet, Here he goes. He looks guilty about something. What's he done?
Hey, Dad.
Yeah, bud?
I think I got my period.
Yeah, and at that point, you start to see people rolling over in the bed, and there's blood on the floor and things. And it progresses to show you men having a menstrual cycle and the awkward moments when you maybe have to ask somebody for a tampon here or a tampon there or a tampon everywhere. Because obviously, that this was a problem before we addressed this, thousands of years, Scott. The plight of men wanting to have menstrual cycles everywhere. It's been ignored. I'm just glad that at long last, we're tackling this problem,
See, you're getting me triggered all over
It's okay
again.
though. It's okay though, because this is something when we went over today. And I just wanted to recap what kind of fired off the conversation earlier on. You know me, folks. I don't like to regurgitate the same stuff, and I can take it even further, and it gets even more ridiculous. Because it's one thing, right?
Before you continue, though, I mean, it says the menstruation ad created by agency BBDO New York and directed by Rachel McDonald shows men in different but common situations that women face during their periods, such as leaving a stain on the bedsheets or accidentally dropping pads and tampons. The national campaign is set to run online. Look, this is ridiculous. This is ridiculous.
If you think this is ridiculous, Scott, if you think this is ridiculous, I'm going to take it a stage further. Because it's one thing, us as a species, confusing ourselves and confusing our young. But when you start to affect and target the penguins who don't have a voice of their own, then I get pissed. Because here, completely natural. That's what a London aquarium says after helping gay penguins get woke. And now the gay penguins have a genderless chick. Yes, indeed. Not something you read every day. But I told you it gets more crazy every day, didn't I? A London aquarium has positioned itself at the tip of the woke spear and will have a lesbian penguin couple adopt and raise a genderless chick. Why, you ask? Well, good question. To discover its personality, without the preconceived gender roles that are such a problem in the penguin world. The 4-month-old Gentoo penguin chick will be the world's first penguin to not have its gender assigned. You go, Pengy, you go. Sea Life London said, adding, it's completely natural for penguins to develop genderless identities. Amid a massive raising of eyebrows, aquarist Charlotte Barkas appeared on Sky News on Tuesday to describe how applying modern human concepts of gender identity to penguins is completely normal and it's not insane at all.
What we wanted to do was to take the opportunity to raise the whole conversation with guests who come through to the aquarium, just to raise that exact point, that there is a difference between gender and sex. And in terms of the way that we manage the colony at the aquarium, we wouldn't manage them differently based on whether they are females or males. What we wanted to do with this chick was give guests an opportunity to meet that individual and learn about its personality without assigning it any sort of preconceived sort of gender roles.
You're absolutely insane. You're insane. You know what's wrong with these penguins, Scott? You know what's wrong with the penguins, right? Because they're like out of their natural habitat, right? And they've got them in like enclosures. They're feeling the side effects of the same spill-off that created the gay frogs. That's what it is, dude. They're affected by the water supply, man.
It's turning the penguins gay.
We've got non-binary penguins, but it gets worse. Listen to this genius.
Like we would if we were to.
So when you say that it is common for Gentoo penguin chicks to be genderless, what exactly do you mean by that? Are you saying that there are no kind of sex-specific or gender-specific behaviours in Gentoo penguin?
What, you mean to tell me that penguins don't stare at the mirror and wonder why they're trapped in one body and feel like another type of penguin? You mean that doesn't go on? What, you mean in schools they don't give them the option to like take penguin hormone blocking things? What? You're not telling me. What's this world coming to?
It's a really sort of difficult subject to navigate specifically. You will get small differences in terms of behaviour based on whether they are male or female.
I mean, it's not like boy penguins are playing football and girl penguins are doing the knitting or something like that.
Do you think? Is that the best you could come up with after going to journalism school and being a presenter all these years? It's not like penguins are playing football or anything.
Actually, when you say assign gender roles, what gender roles can you assign to a penguin?
Exactly, and I think that's the key thing. You don't really see it in the animal kingdom. There is a little bit of conversation going on at the moment in terms of...
What does that tell you? What does that tell you that you don't see this nonsense in the animal kingdom? Eh? Do you think the animals might be a bit smarter than us, Scott?
I would ask her, why are you trying to impose a pseudo-intellectual construct
on a bloody penguin
on a freaking penguin? Absolute psychotic moron. Oh my God.
Whether we might be seeing gender roles in some higher primates, much like we're often compared to other higher primates because we're so similar. But with penguins, there's a difference between sex differences and with gender roles. Penguins would have to have some...
The gender role of a penguin.
Sort of society where other penguins were potentially putting pressure on little baby penguins that they should be more masculine or more feminine and
No, that's called
How
like...
about this?
Oh.
They're freaking penguins.
They're
How about
putting
that?
societal pressure on them when they're young, Scott, to be male or female penguins. I know, but we'll let her finish. She's a genius, this one, eh?
things like that. So what we wanted to do was give guests that opportunity to not be putting those assumptions onto a little Gentoo chick.
Yeah.
Oh, she said chick.
Oh.
You know, the word, you know, chick is utilized to refer to a female in the, well, in the human world.
It says here we wanted to
Is that what
give
she's doing?
we wanted to give guests an opportunity to meet that individual and learn about its personality, with not assigning it any sort of preconceived gender roles. However, in the next sentence, she admitted that you don't really see socially assigned gender roles. Think a penguin version of boys playing with toy guns or girls playing with dolls in the animal kingdom to begin with. Exactly. Gender ideology, Times columnist Janice Turner commented, is scrambling the brains of scientists. Of course a penguin doesn't have gender identity. It's a bloody penguin. It has a biological sex. And this is where they're getting so confused. The lines now between gender and biological sex for most people have been taken away, and they think it's the same thing when it's not the same thing at all.
She contradicted herself, right? So she started out by saying, well, yeah, there's a difference between sex and gender, and then went on to explain and muddy the waters and conflate the two together.
She went on to mansplain it, Scott. We'll accuse her of mansplaining. I think that's a good insult to throw at these people. But yeah, so how long before the penguins take off the tuxedo and they start wearing something else? That's my question, Scott. Maybe we'll see them in like a pink onesie. Maybe they'll have like a pink onesie on or something.
I was going to say the tuxedo is the attire of the toxic male, right?
There you go. They're totally toxic then. They're wanting to break these stereotypes before toxic penguins take over from the real men that used to be in the real world.
James Bond wore a tuxedo.
Maybe the animals at some point are going to get together and go, have you seen the state of this mob? Forget the Chinese or the Russians coming in like we were talking about earlier, Scott. It's going to be like flocks of birds and penguins. It's going to be like Noah's Ark all over again, only they're coming to get rid of us.
Exactly.
They'd probably win.
Yeah, it's going to look like D-Day, right? The storming of the beaches, but it's going to be like thousands of like arcs and like all these animals floating off, and they're just like, that's it. We're about to end it.
I don't know.
Guys. Yeah.
And all this one day. We've got a new member over on YouTube. That's absolutely fantastic. We only need 6 now. We only need 6. Yes, James Bond is a woman in a one-off special, Tessa. Yes, we still have... They haven't taken away the male Bond entirely just yet. Not just yet. But it's coming. Oh, yes, it's coming. There he was. Don't. 6 new members needed before the hairy hands. But that's
awesome.
not where my...
Thank you.
Yes, this isn't where it all ends today, folks. It's not where it all ends, because we've got people tweeting down here. Tweeting about penguins. Do penguins tweet? Do they just ar? What? No, that's a seal, isn't it? What noise does a penguin make? See, I don't even know what noise it makes, let alone care what gender it thinks it is. I honestly tried so hard just to ignore this, but come on, leave the bloody penguins alone. It's amazing how well Gentoo penguins have done to survive so long without humans around to assign gender and help them out with identity issues. Brilliant. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So the penguins' adopted parents, Rocky and Marima, are both females and have demonstrated their ability to raise a chick by sticking together through 6 breeding seasons and jointly building a nest. However, previous attempts at giving same-sex penguins a shot at parenthood have failed. So it's nothing new. Just days before Sea Life broke the news, an egg that had been adopted by a pair of male penguins, hey, in a Berlin zoo failed to hatch. Even the chick didn't want to come out of the egg.
So they're taking this one anomaly.
Mm-hmm.
This one anomaly, because it literally said right there that this is not the norm. It never
They
really...
built a nest together, so that makes them lesbian penguins. Well, that's assuming a lot, isn't it?
Yeah,
so now if you just live with somebody, it means you're having like sex with them, because that's been assumed here, right? We've got another new member coming in. What the heck's going on? Wow. Thanking you, folks.
Thank you, Robin.
Yeah. And that's a wicked tash, Robin. May I just say, sir, you are rocking a tash and a half.
I believe that is I forgot his name, but he's in that's in the movie Office Space.
Okay,
Is,
then that's okay. It's still a rockin' tassel.
Oh, it is. Oh, it is. It's an epic stash.
So it says here, despite all the woke posturing, even genderless penguins can't run. Well, waddle from the facts of life. Sea Life said that as an androgynous bird develops, it may become part of the aquarium's breeding program. At that point, whatever gender identity it has picked up will play second fiddle to whatever is in its fluffy trousers. Yes, indeedy. Wow. Wow.
Like I said, they took this one anomaly, right? These two female penguins that let's be honest, probably the two females both think that they're the mother of this chick, right? And
This
so
video
they're
is
both
meant to
kind
be-
of playing the mother role and you know.
Oh, I'm looking for penguin noises, not silly music. That was definitely a hate. Oh, that was definitely a chick trapped in a dude's body. Man, I feel like a woman penguin. Who knew?
If you listen close enough, it's kind of like hey 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 hey.
There you go. There you go. There you go. The dulcet the tones of penguin speak. Who knew? Who knew? But you know me, folks. I don't stop there. And yesterday we were celebrating International Pronoun Day, which still makes me laugh even when I say it. Scott's ready to fly out of the chair in a minute. You know, you've got like anchors on that chair to hold you down some days, Scott, because it's infuriating, isn't it? But it's one thing myself and Scott, you know, talking about these things, and I've mentioned from time to time that there's genuine people with, and thank you, Scott, for giving me this term, I keep forgetting it, gender dysphoria, and people that have already transitioned. And for me, a lot of the new people who are jumping on the bandwagon more as a social kind of status, more of a kind of fad, a trend, even, you know, as an innocent victim of the confusion that's going on in schools. I think it kind of makes a mockery for those that really have had these problems, and actual trans people that don't seem to be getting the kind of voice, the platform that this new wave of people coming into the movement gets, Scott. So I was really kind of interested today when I found an article, and it was thanks to the Discord server again, the KBS Discord server. Somebody had dropped this in here. And we always like to get the story from the real people on the ground. And in this case, a trans woman. And Russia Today says, and I've got a story here, that's really important to go into, I think, all joking aside, take a look at it from somebody else's perspective. I'm a trans woman, but I think this woke world has gone too far. And the penguin story I used as an example of that, where we're actually now like including penguins into this insanity that we've constructed in the minds of, it seems many, but probably not so many. But it says here, and this is really interesting, Scott, you'll like this. Trans people have...
This is an op-ed from somebody who is trans.
Yep.
So
yep,
very important.
Trans people have lost the plot. Every day, an increasing amount of absurdity floods in as they do more harm than good. They scream for acceptance without realizing that the ones damaging their image aren't bigots, but themselves. From anger directed at celebrities for the rational belief that parents shouldn't decide whether their 3-year-old is trans, to a culture of outrage that freaks out at the most minor of offences, transgender activists have become detrimental to my and others' very existence. Exactly what I said yesterday, folks. Exactly. Remember I was talking about how on International Pronoun Day, it's the people that are most outraged, the ones that are shouting the loudest and things. They're the ones that are doing the most damage here. It says, not helping matters is the fact that these people are laying bombs within our language in the hope they trigger, so that they themselves can become triggered. Saying transgendered instead of transgender can see you labelled as transphobic, and as can saying trans women instead of trans space women. This is a linguistic minefield with the sole intent of catching people off guard. And those who are caught in the blast are branded as bigots. This concept is nonsensical, as it's one thing to correct somebody who made a grammatical mistake, but another thing altogether to get outright offended when somebody makes a simple error, and that's what is occurring. A turn of events which only pushes people away, so no one wants to associate with a group of people who become so easily upset. Hampering things even further is the fact that the once radical portion of the left has seemingly taken control, and now no one can speak up lest they become a target for the vitriol and abuse which is conglomerate is composed. How do I know this? Because I'm a trans person myself, and my reward for speaking with rationality is to be labelled as a self-loathing, bootlicking, trans-misogynist turf. And I can't be called a transphobe. And if I can be called a transphobe, then your normal human being doesn't stand a chance. Especially in an era when people are pushing an agenda that suggests you better do something naughty or you're a bigot. I desperately wish I was making that last bit up. In late August, a journalist, or let's be real, outrage merchant, Anna Valens, went on a tirade over at the Daily Dot about how it was transphobic to decline sex with a trans person on the basis that they are trans. Likewise, just last week, women's competitive cyclist Rachel McKinnon made multiple claims that are outright audacious. In one instance, she said genital preferences are transphobic, and in another, she boldly expressed that any sexual orientation other than pansexuality is immoral. The media warned us that the recent release of The Joker was going to lead to an incel uprising, but I don't think they meant it quite like this. Trans people want all the compassion and acceptance in the world, yet in many cases they're not willing to be equally as understanding. Last year, the flames of fury flared up when a woman named Krista Hanna filed a human rights complaint against a women's shelter after she was forced to share a room with a transgender woman in Toronto. Many people took it at face value and levied all sorts of hate at her, but the actual situation is more complex. Hannah is a rape victim, and her roommate was a pre-op trans woman who wasn't yet far enough into their transition to be passable or even fully presentable. As was described by Ms. Hannah, her roommate was male-bodied with facial and chest hair. Now, maybe it's because I'm a rape victim who battles my own forms of PTSD, but I too would be triggered by sharing a room with a complete stranger who looks like a man. I don't care what they identify as. In regards to Krista Hanna, that's exactly what happened. As was reported by the National Post, the sharing of a room with somebody who looked like a man caused her stress, anxiety, rape flashbacks, symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, and sleep deprivation. Now, when she reported this to the shelter staff, they offered to move her to a new room, but it lacked a door, therefore allowing no privacy. So she left the shelter altogether. Yet to the trans community, none of that mattered, and Krista was raked over the coals. Even I was attacked for trying to defend her. Worse still is the fact that shelters which exclude trans women are now being vandalised. Never mind that they would help women who need it. And to the petulant children who make up what I call the pronoun police, all they can think of is their own selfish and self-centric worldviews. Few in this community, to which I have been forcefully tied, seem to have any basic understanding of the various reasons why our presence may be triggering to some, especially in a women's shelter that houses rape victims. It shouldn't take a big brain to see why a male-looking individual with a floppy manly bit may not be the best fit. And a fact of reality is that I was born a man. Even now, post-hormone replacement therapy, I have masculine traits that will never go away. When I die, if far off into the future I'm dug up, my bones will have archaeologists pegging me as a male, not female. And will join us after the break for more from the Kev Baker Show. Don't go anywhere, folks. We'll be right back. Yeah, and that's a really interesting article that we're getting into here, Scott. We got 225 people here on YouTube. Wow.
Excellent. Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, I mean, look, this person is speaking from a rational point of view. They realize, look, I have gender dysphoria. I've okay. They said, look, I have gender dysphoria. It's pretty much, and they're accepting that fact, right? They're accepting the fact that, this person is saying, look, I have these issues, and I don't expect everybody to understand it, right? And so they're just looking at this from a rational point of view. They know that this isn't like a normal thing. This person knows that, like, not everybody is transgender and doesn't expect everybody to be transgender or accept it, really, and man, that whole thing with that woman, in the shelter having to share a room with a dude, basically what it is. That's horrific. That's appalling. And then for them to go after her, she's a rape victim, and somehow she's the one that is. I don't get it. I really don't get it. But like I said, I'm glad that somebody. That's somebody who's actually trans, has some common sense and is bringing some logic to the situation.
Absolutely not. Sorry, I was just messaging Joe there, Scotty. Yeah.
Nice.
He's going to be live after the Kev Baker Show today. So I'm trying to
how
persuade him.
Appalling is that? How appalling is that? Putting a rape victim in a room with a dude.
I find the whole thing with trans people in sport as well just ludicrous. Absolutely ludicrous.
Look up high school runner. Like high school runner transgender. There's a story that's been going around where there's some yeah it's the female high school athlete fights back. I think this is maybe the one.
Yeah, we'll bring that over for after that one. I'm seeing if Joe wants to go live on the stream here after this show. It's worth it. We'll try and drag him in that way. What that means, folks, that means KBS will be rolling on for an extra hour here, but only if you want me to, folks. Only if you can handle the woo. We're going back to the mothership in a moment, and 220 amazing people in here. Absolutely fantastic. Thank you all for being here. Really, really brilliant. And of course, we're going back to the home of the Kev Baker Show right now, tfrlive.com. Remember, check it out. Tell everyone about TFR, folks. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Moving into the final segment of today's show. Right here with my good friend, Scotty Lopez. And coming up right after today's Kev Baker Show, we'll be shifting gears. We'll be taking off one uniform, shoving on another, and we'll be joining Joe on the Freedom Link right after the Kev Baker Show. I hope you've enjoyed today's proceedings here. We started off looking at the vial Vortex. Pretty cool. cattle mutilations, all that kind of paranormal, supernatural stuff. Or should I say, Scott, interdimensional. And then we moved back into the weird and wonderful stories from Bizarro Land. We triggered a lot of people out there on today's stream when we were talking about man-pawns and the male menstrual cycle. I mean, it's all in the name, right? Menstrual cycle. So I thought to myself, you know, it would give people maybe an hour to simmer down at the start of the show. And then we moved back into the Bizarro Land. We started off talking about penguins. No, I'm not making it up, folks. Literally, we were talking about penguins who have been, well, it says here in the headline, London Aquarium helps gay penguins get woke. And they now have genderless chicks. So in the past couple of days, I've been really hammering on the whole gender identity politics and all the stuff that's going on right now with International Pronoun Day yesterday. And we got into an article on Russia Today from somebody that is trans, somebody who's quite outraged actually at the way the world is reacting and acting right now around this whole topic. And like I was saying to you, Scotty, it makes a mockery of people who actually have gone through real issues, real problems that they've had to face with their true gender dysphoria.
Exactly. And what it is it's this person basically coming to terms with the fact that, hey, I'm different and I don't expect everybody to cater to my needs, right? I don't expect everyone to accept or you know, this person has some logic and understands why somebody may be uncomfortable with the fact that they're transgender and looks at it from a rational point of view, right? Like, look.
And there's a bit in there, Scott, about how, you know, just because somebody gets it grammatically wrong, you don't take their head off for it. It's not as if they're trying to insult you. They just made a mistake. And how can we be, you know, obviously we're going to make a mistake in this day and age. How the hell are we meant to know what's going on?
Yeah, exactly. Look, it would be like, I sometimes use this example, right? I'm in a wheelchair, obviously, right? I don't expect every single place to be accessible to me. You know, I've come to terms with the fact that there are certain situations to where it's not going to work. You know what I mean? Like, if I went over to somebody's house and they had a tree house in their backyard, am I going to throw a hissy fit and rip their head off and cause a big scene because they don't have an elevator going into the tree house because I want to go up there? No, I just have to accept the fact that I'm not going to go in the tree house. You know? Sorry, that's just the limitations that I have to deal with. You know, and it's the same with these people who are trans or whatever. You just have to deal with the fact that because that's your lifestyle or you know that's you're dealing with this gender dysphoria issue, you're going to have to accept the fact that no, you're not going to be able to go in that bathroom. I'm sorry.
And no, you're not going to have a menstrual cycle. And JP in the chat rooms quite incandescent. How can that be possible? Men can't even have them. That's the whole point. Where science and facts and biology no longer matters anymore to the woke brigade, JP. That's a side issue. As long as everyone's equal, to hell with the fact it's biologically impossible, Scott.
Yeah. And so, I mean, sure. Is it wrong to discriminate against them, like businesses and stuff? No. You know, you shouldn't discriminate against somebody like that, but you don't expect everyone to just bend over backwards for every single little thing that you want. Like me, you know, of course, I would expect a business to have a ramp, you know, for accessibility or something like that. But in every single case, for every single person, for me to expect them to cater to every single little thing, is preposterous. It's ridiculous.
Yep.
It's you have to expect the limitations of of your choices.
And it's like what this person says, though, it's almost like they're weaponizing the language to trip people up, so that they do get triggered, so that they can get triggered in return. Like they said, it's a minefield. Now, I'll just continue on with this here. It says, and I'll start with one of the paragraphs we finished off with. A fact of reality is that I was born a boy. Even now, post-hormone replacement therapy, I have masculine traits that will never go away. When I die, if far off into the future I'm dug up, my bones will have archaeologists pegging me as male, not female. Now, I bring that analogy up because many trans people seem to deny that they were born as the gender opposite of what they identify as. But I am not 100% female, and I never will be. I will never have a period, although some smooth-brained idiots like to argue that some women have issues that prevent them from having periods. So does that mean that you're saying they're not women too? No, that's not what that means. It means if I have a dangly bit and no potential even exists for me to have a period, because unlike biological women who may have the conditions that affect how their bodies work, they still have the proper bodies of the sex it happens to be. And I don't. My chromosomes are XY, and I was born a boy. I will never have to worry about cervical cancer, though when I'm older, I will want to have my prostate checked. None of this means trans people shouldn't be respected as the gender they present themselves to be. We are anomalies in that our brains are for some reason developed on a course which differs from what our chromosomes dictate. I'm not going to call being trans a mental illness, but it's an issue that stems from the brain. Even scans of that organ reveal people like me have brains more closely resembling the gender we present ourselves to be, and due to that, I'm a proponent of supporting transitioning, but that support comes with some caveats. One, or I, for one, don't think trans women should be competing against cis women in competitive sports. And that means women that are born women and still identify women shouldn't be basically racing against something that's biologically male. And at least not outside of specialist leagues where everyone consents to trans women being allowed. And in normal events, we are seeing trans people destroy track records, or records in track, weightlifting, and other events. And that's not fair to biological females. And they say this is all in the name of equality. But you see how it's not equal, folks? It's far from equal. And it says, I'm also opposed to letting kids take various meds. By all means, if your child is trans, it's for the best to support and love them. But growing up is a confusing time. And it may not be a good idea to let them begin a full-on transition. These days, it's simply too easy to get a diagnosis of gender dysphoria, and I fear the repercussions. And we're seeing one woman in the UK taking the Tavistock Clinic, not the Tavistock Centre, the Tavistock Clinic, to court because of this very problem. They're far too quick to put them onto not even just any normal hormone blockers, but trial drugs. Actual trial drugs with hardly any consultation, folks. Now, if that's not a crime, I don't know what is. I have zero doubts in my mind that soon enough we will have teens and adults stepping forward who were convinced that they were trans at a young age, only to grow up and realize they aren't. Some boys are just effeminate, and some girls are just a bit masculine. But today, society is going out of its way to tell them that they are trans. Let me just add in Joe. On you go, Scotty.
Yeah, remember girls who were a little more masculine? They were known as tomboys, right?
Yeah.
They're still chicks, right? And like I said, it's just this person is using some common sense and realizes the fact that they're like, hey, I'm trans, but but they realize that this is not, that they're an anomaly, right? We literally said, look, I'm an anomaly. I don't expect people to just totally cater to everything, and I don't know, man. I don't know. We're in such a weird time right now.
You think, Scotty? Joe, my friend, we've been having interesting conversations today. We started looking at the male menstrual cycle and the invention of manpons, and the fact that in the name of equality, you know, there's going to be tampons in male bathrooms everywhere. There's ads showing men taking their first period, you know, that guilty walk down the stair, talking to dad. You remember it, Joe, right? Where you're having to say to dad, Dad, I think I've taken my period. And instead of dad saying, get the hell up the room, what happened was, no, it's okay, son, we'll go and get your first tampon and things. You're taking your first period, that's okay. And then if that wasn't, like, ridiculous enough, we've now found out that a zoo in England is just taking it upon itself, by the way, thrust itself upon the penguin community to confuse them with gender Olympics. And we've got 2 lesbian penguins that are going to be adopting a genderless chick, because you wouldn't want penguins to be growing up with all those penguin prejudices putting pressure on it during penguin childhood, Joe. So, yeah, we've had a good day. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right, man. I gotta be honest with you. That kind of thing really it upsets me because so many people buy into it, and then again, I'm encouraged because so many people have unplugged because it's just so loony and just so batshit crazy that they tune out and it doesn't really apply or affect them, you know? And to be quite honest with you, I'm one of those people. I've just tuned out to that kind of crap.
And luckily we have, we have somebody who does identify themselves as trans, right? And they're actually bringing some common sense.
Oh, lots of common sense, Joe. Lots of common sense. Like the admission that they'll never fully be a woman because they were biologically a man.
Yeah, this op-ed on RT is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, I'll get back into it here. And it says, these days it's simply too easy to get a diagnosis of gender dysphoria, and I fear the repercussions. I have zero doubts in my mind soon enough we will have teens and adults stepping forward who were convinced that they were trans at a young age, only to grow up and realise that they aren't. And that's happening right now, folks. That's not the future. That's now. And some boys are just effeminate, and some girls are just a bit masculine. But today, society is going out of their way to tell them they're trans. A scary thought for a community that seems to be already run on fear. In 2017, the Southern Poverty Law Centre sent out a tweet linking an article about transgender hate murders. In a follow-up tweet, they listed names of all trans people who had been murdered that year. Now, the placement of the names below an article about hate murders seems to imply that all the listed names were the victims of the hate crimes. As is so often the case, this isn't true. Of the names listed, 3 stand out: Sean Hake, Kiwi Herring, and Scout Schultz. What's important about these people is that they weren't killed for anything related to their gender identities. All 3 were shot by police in different states after charging at law enforcement with knives. That same year, multiple non-trans people were killed by police for the very same reason. Yet the trans individuals' deaths are tallied up and used as examples of a rising trend in the murder of transgender people, a trend that has been occurring for years. What's most disingenuous is that in many cases, there's little to no proof that their murders are linked to their status of being trans. Some are sex workers in dangerous areas where cis women are also found murdered each year. Or they're just victims of normal everyday violence. It sucks, but a lot of people just happen to get shot in the United States for a myriad of reasons. Just this year, Claire Legato, a trans woman in Ohio, was shot dead after her mother got into an altercation with a man in their yard about an issue relating to theft. Jordan Kofer, also from Ohio, was tragically killed when a gunman went on a mass shooting in Dayton. These 2 deaths are included in the Human Rights Campaign list of, quote, violence against the transgender community. Now, the list ends with this sentence: HRC has been tracking reports of fatal anti-transgender violence for the past several years. Anti-transgender violence. Weird. I didn't know the Dayton, Ohio gunman did all that for a single person. Even in some cases where the transgender person kills themselves. If an agenda can be pushed, this community will immediately take a still warm corpse and bludgeon people with it. This week, comedian and actress Daphne Dorman took her own life. She was cited by Dave Chappelle in his most recent Netflix stand-up as the person who was laughing the hardest at his trans jokes. Now, in case you're unaware, this is the stand-up special that caused many in the media to cry foul and call Chappelle transphobic. Now, Daphne, on the other hand, thought he was hilarious and would go on to tweet in support of her friend. Her words don't matter anymore, though, because now that she can't defend herself, her existence has been retconned, and it is now Dave Chappelle's fault she died. A frankly just sickening and frustrating turn of events, although it is one that makes sense when you look a little bit deeper. In 2017, at the HRC National Dinner, President Chad Griffin gave an eye-opening speech. He began by thanking Hillary Clinton, who had a speaking role that year, before then repeatedly emphasizing how things for the LGBT individuals were much brighter under Obama. This is important because the HRC is a major supporter of Democratic candidates and politicians. Now, he eventually went on to discuss HRC Rising, or what he labelled as the largest or the single largest grassroots expansion in the organisation's history. This was important to him, as he proceeded to say, it's critical that we organise and mobilise the 10 million plus LGBTQ voters in this country, which, by the way, is a voting bloc that is larger than the margin of victory of every presidential election since 1984. So, not that they're trying to turn them into like a voting army or anything. So for a couple
of Pete.
Yeah. So for a couple of years now, this speech hasn't sat well with me. Remember, this is a trans person, folks. I look at our media landscape and watch as fear-mongering rules the day. A narrative that has been created which paints anyone on the right as a hateful bigot and has gay and trans people fearful that they're going to die. Trans lists overconflate and simplify the reasons people are murdered. Comedians are blamed for suicides that have nothing to do with anything they've done. And anyone who so much as questions the absurdity of what's happening is torn down and labelled every negative thing that will stick. Why this keeps happening is clear. An environment that has been created that is pushing people to conform to a particular mindset by brute force scare tactics, and this is inevitably convincing them to vote a certain way. The left is ruling by division and fear. Browse social media and trans death stat is cited ad nauseum. These people legitimately believe that they're going to die. All the while, the actual issues that caused those deaths aren't being discussed. Inner city crime, prostitution are big factors, as is poor mental health. I mean, sane people don't go charging the police with knives. Yet those issues don't get blamed, nor are they being adequately discussed. Daphne Dorman, in these people's eyes, didn't join the 41% because she had a deep-rooted issues. No, it's Chappelle's fault. It's the right's fault. It's the bigot's fault. And as a right-leaning individual myself, who also happens to be trans, I know this to be false. I'm embraced by my community. They aren't transphobic. They don't want me dead. They just have issues with much of the same stuff that I do. And a lot of trans people call me a self-loather. But I don't loathe myself, nor do I loathe the fact that I'm trans. I just loathe the community I've been forcefully grouped into. And I think it's understandable why a lot of other people do too. Trannies and their allies are now their own worst enemies, but unlike them, I refuse to shoot myself in the foot. And that there sums up absolutely bloody everything I've been saying on this topic since I started getting triggered yesterday.
Absolutely, dude. This is exactly the way I would expect a member of that community, if you will. And again, this is why identifying yourself or tying your identity to something like this. I'm LGBT. I'm black. I'm white. I'm rich. I'm poor. I'm Jewish. I'm Christian. When you do that, you are instantaneously boxing yourself in and creating a bias, whether you like it or not. And unfortunately, it's the human way. That's what we do. Now, the people that this individual associate with are probably more libertarian leaning minded individuals that respect the right of individuals. Let's also remember too, sexuality is nobody's business, and why it's been so put front and center in society, whether it be for work or socializing, it doesn't matter, but it seems to have taken a much more front and center position in social behavior and social engineering. And if you remember the poopster and his Russian Yuri Gagagenheimer, that guy that if to the United States, and G. Edward Griffin interviews him, and he tells you the story about how in order to basically take over a country and basically uproot your current value set,
You demoralize it first, Joe.
you have to demoralize it. So what better way to demoralize a society than to put sexuality front and center? And then you start to debase it. And slowly but surely, you start to highlight those types of sexuality, if you will, or differences that are on the edges, that aren't standard fare, because there's a shock value to it. Whether you like it or not, there is. And it's normally that shock value that causes, Yuri Bezmenov, that's it, that causes that animosity, that causes that disdain, that, and, you know, we can all judge till from now till the cows come home, but we are all human beings with free will, and we all have to respect the right of individuals, whether you think it's right or wrong, And, you know, we've gotten to a point now, you know, I remember back in the day, Judas Priest, one of my favorite bands of all time, had the most flamboyant and homosexual frontman of all time, but no one knew it. But everybody knew it, but no one knew it. Like, I was totally floored when I found out Rob Halford was gay.
That was like my mum with Freddie Mercury and Queen.
Exactly. But you go back now and you look at how they behaved on stage, man, and you're like, holy smoke, how did I not know? How on earth did I not know? I mean, the guy floats when he walks.
Dude, it was like I was listening to Kevin Bridges, a Scottish comedian, just before we came on air. And he says, I'm like too young to remember Jimmy Savile on the telly. He says, but come on, folks, take a look at the guy. How the hell didn't people know? If you were going to draw one of these bad people, he would look exactly like Jimmy Savile.
I'm telling you, bro, but there was a naivete back then that does not exist anymore. And it's because they've demoralized. It's because they've taken the things that society and religion has deemed unclean or wrong or whatever, and they've taken it and they've put it front and center. And then, but through social engineering, it becomes part of the workplace. It becomes part of everything you see, you hear. There's a sexual component to it now, when at its core, it's a sacred thing. It's a private, sacred thing that's basically been desecrated, you know, and for a good reason. Because just like we put out energies when we do certain things, sexuality is probably one of the most intense. And you can do things right and you can do things wrong. And you can send that energy to the good place or you can go to the bad place. Right. But it's going to happen.
Well,
And what they've done.
we're almost out of time, but we will be switching gears and we will be embarking on our next journey with the Freedom Link right after the break.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so don't go anywhere, folks. We'll be right back. There we go. Yes. All good, all good, Mr. Scotty. All good.
You're going to stay with us or you going to go?
I probably got to shoot.
No probs, my man. No probs, dude.
Yeah. All right.
Thanks for having me, everyone.
Scotty,
and
today has been epic. It has been epic,
good to see
my
you,
friend.
Joe.
Love you long time. Love you long time.
Yes, I shall see you tomorrow on Freaky, and I'll catch both of you boys later.
I'm gonna say everything twice. Say everything twice.
Later, Scotty boy.
All right, later.
There we go. And now all I need to do is hide one of those. Yes.
Yeah,
We'll
you've
keep
got this
that
thing licked, dude.
There we go. See, I've got it sussed, Joe. I'll just bring you in bigger now, look. Just like that. There he is, look. Yeah.
Wow, what a great topic, man. I mean, that there's a biggie, you know.
Oh, it is.
You can go back and look at how this has really been a plan for a very, very long time, and that we're really seeing the culmination or execution of that final push to really bring about that communist type, and and I don't say that from the 50s Red Scare commie pinko type of Chi-Com.
I need to oil my arm.
Yeah, you do.
Well, the brain's talking. Yeah, from the people I listen to, they compare it more to like a Marxism, a really extreme form of Marxism.
Yeah, well, what it is, Kev, and this is, of course,
Joe,
the brain.
let me just tell you, though, I don't claim to know anything about politics when it comes to these different forms of it or anything like that.
Transcends that, though. It transcends that because politics is just the makeup. That's the
It's the theater.
It's putting lipstick on a pig. You know,
I like
that's
that.
basically what it is.
Yeah.
And it's like my wife says. She says it's a sacred thing that has been desecrated, and that is not just sexual. They are systematically desecrating everything that is important and everything that is pivotal and sacred and part of what is so important about being human and humanity. Because there is so much more to this flesh suit, right? The flesh suit is nothing but a vessel.
It's just a vehicle. It's all it is. It's just a vehicle.
What's in it? And it's those connections, Kev, that we don't see, the wireless connections that we don't see that are very important. And you can choose to recognize them or not, but you're still feeding into it, whether you know it or not, whether you acknowledge it or not. It's all happening.
Yeah,
it's all happening.
Just because you stick your fingers in your ears and go, nah, 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 doesn't make something go away. You might not be aware of it, but again, doesn't make it any less real. Absolutely.
And if nothing is sacred, right, it makes it incredibly easy to make the government the god.
Oh, yeah.
Wherever it is. And that's exactly what they're doing. Look at how many people have to, and this is not something to, do you need to bring the
I'm just looking at, you're all right just now. You're all right just now, man.
Well, what I was saying was just look at how many people now rely on the government for something. Now, whether it be healthcare, being subsidized, being provided, and everybody says, well, you pay for it. Absolutely. Under duress, absolutely. You know, I don't pay for that because I want to. I pay for it because it's out of servitude. Because if I don't, they're going to break my knees and send me to prison.
You're going to sleeping with the fishies, Joe.
That's right. I mean, honest to God, it's like, yeah, you got to pay your tribute to the Don. And if you don't.
Here we go, dude. Here we go.
That's happened.
Here we go. You're live in 3, 2.
Oh, man, this is great. what wonderful service we have here on the Freedom Link, on your protection from deception, tfrlive.com, and over on YouTube. My goodness, we got a ton of people over here on the live stream, and also in the chat, tfrlive.com/chat. You can chat in one place. You can chat in both places if you're as talented as many Wookiees are. And Uncle Kev here for hour 1 of the Baker Link and hour 3 of the whatever. And we have just got a great conversation going on about, and in this case, it's the social engineering related to LGBT, related to sexuality, just how everything is being steered. And so then you had this guy this whistleblower come out, Kev, that recorded hundreds of hours of video of CNN, of people across the swath of CNN, right? And all of them are crying foul. All of them are pissed that here they are, a news organization, and they've totally gone off the beaten path. I mean, they always knew that there's some level of going off the path.
Yeah.
Right? Many of them speak about...
But a lot of the time going off the path would maybe be to keep the ratings going, Joe, as opposed to any...
just it.
Yeah.
Clickbait. It's about getting the viewers. They even went as far as to say, one supervisor or producer went as far as to say that they generate the news, meaning that they make a story out of nothing.
Yep.
Just to generate the clicks, just to generate the viewers, to appease sponsors. That's how they make the money. And then you have Jeff Zucker that's talking, make the sole focus every day, this impeachment thing. It's been that way since the beginning of this president coming into the White House. And to hear a network CEO, this is how important this is to understand. CNN is owned by Time Warner, who owns Comcast, who owns NBC, who owns... So you see how this ends up cascading. Now you only have a handful of people, five people own the entire mainstream media. Five people control the entire news cycle. So to hear it firsthand, whether or not the way they obtained it is shady, doesn't matter. It is absolutely proof positive. You need know nothing else that one of the most powerful people on the face of this earth is Jeff Zucker. And I could tell you the Murdochs, same thing. If you don't think that Fox News isn't playing their part in this whole charade, you're sadly mistaken.
And it shows you how kind of inclusive or private a club this. Now, it's nothing new because before Murdoch, you had Maxwell, Robert Maxwell, the huge media mogul. And of course, his name's been back in the news lately. Why? Because his daughter, and bear in mind he was quite openly a Mossad agent, his daughter's been the handler for Epstein.
Well, what do you know?
Exactly. You see, these people all move in the same circles.
Yep, tight-knit circle. And that's exactly what's going on. And that's what's important to understand. You can go back to J.P. Morgan. J.P. Morgan was the guy that he was the godfather of all of this media mafia, if you will, the first Don. And basically what he did, it was really kind of genius at the time. And Charles Lindbergh Sr., the father of Charles Lindbergh, the guy that crosses the Atlantic for the first time in the Spirit of St. Louis, was pretty much one of us. He was a turn-of-the-century truther whose sole focus was really the money trust, or the titans of old, your Carnegies and your Rockefellers and your Rothschilds and all of the names that you hear ad nauseum on your YouTube videos and your tinfoil hat stuff, right? So that's basically, and it's all true. It's absolutely all true. But J.P. Morgan was one of the robber barons, and of course, a very powerful member of the money trust at the turn of the century. And so he says, okay, I've seen what guys like Horace Greeley and everybody have done, these powerful newsmen of old, and how valuable it is to control the information stream. So he went and had some of his closest managers go out and evaluate how it was that the news cycle happens, how it operates, and then what are the most important assets for JP Morgan to go buy up. Now, mind you, he was not in the news at all. He's a banker, but he saw the power and the value in, basically, it was propaganda before it was propaganda.
Yeah.
So you had Bernays, he came up with the term, and he basically kind of, I think, in my humble opinion, took his uncle, Sigmund Freud, his knowledge of psychotherapy and psychoanalysis, and you take J.P. Morgan and how he manipulated the media. He was the first one to do it. He sent his managers out and they bought 20 of the largest publications, basically the ones that generated the news and then fed the news over the wire to the local newspapers. And then the local newspapers would go ahead and, yada, yada, yada. That's how it would go. So he controlled the big ones, the ones that created the story, like the New York Times, like the Chicago Tribune, all of the big powerhouses, and he totally and completely took it over. He put his people in charge of those news organizations, and he controlled what got printed, and J.P. Morgan never was painted in a bad light because he controlled it. Now you fast forward to today, and look what's going on. 5 people. 5. You're telling me Operation Mockingbird isn't alive and well? Come on. It doesn't have to be a government organization, even though they're in bed with each
That's
other.
the standing orders as Mockingbird. That just is the media now, right?
Yeah, right. It does. The CIA doesn't have to be involved anymore because they just do it now. It's like they've ingrained that behavior. So, we'll just check in from time to time, but you guys got it. And that's kind of how it is. Their well-being is tied to making sure that propaganda continues to flow. And like I said, this expose is just an absolute proof that that's the case. And I would bet you that if that same person went to Fox News and did the same thing, they would get the same thing on the other side. It doesn't matter. It's the same thing. They have to drive divisiveness. And the best way to do it is either through religion or through politics, because those are the 2 biggies that everybody says that's what you don't talk about. And if you do talk about it, it almost inevitably always leads to argument and to heated debate. And it does that. I mean, it honest to God does. It gets you going because people feel so passionate. I don't know how it is over there, Kev, but I know that, like, for example, your boy Boris, by the way, he's got a Russian first name. You notice that?
Yeah.
Just want to say
Born
that.
in America.
Oh, wow. He's confused.
Very.
So,
have you not seen his hairdo? But I tell you what, though. Give him his due. He's on the brink of getting us a Brexit deal.
Oh, he's on the brink of knowing, that it's not going to pass. And the EU has already said, we're not going to extend you. So he actually got exactly what he wants. He's put Parliament in the corner now. Because
it's getting exciting. It's getting exciting because we checked this out. Look, Sky News. They've got the Brexit countdown. We're 13 days away, folks. They've got 13 days.
Wait a minute. He got a haircut, dude?
No, it's just it's not a windy day. Usually, it's flying about in the slightest of breezes. It's that really fine
I
here.
think he's got some Donald Trump gel in there somewhere.
There's a lot of similarities. I'm not saying they're the same.
Do you notice that too? I noticed that.
Yeah,
He's pompous.
very divisive. People
Yeah.
either love him or hate him.
And rough like a 60 grit sandpaper.
Yeah. His hero's Winston Churchill. I'm not knocking that. I'm not knocking it. But it never should be forgotten that he come from the same Bullingdon club, the Bullingdon boys that burns 20 and 50-pound notes in front of homeless people.
Doesn't Trump have Churchill's bust in his office? I think
Yeah.
he does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
He has a stiffy for old Churchill.
Yeah.
But you know what, dude? Rightfully so.
Yeah,
He was
oh,
a
yeah.
pretty influential individual.
Big time. If he
and
hadn't
if
taken
I
over
was
the
in
wheel,
his
if he hadn't taken over the wheel against the bad guys back in the day, I fear for what might have happened, you know?
Well, which is crazy because as First Lord of the Admiralty in World War I, he got his clock cleaned.
But, look at this. So this is 13 days until Brexit, or as I call it, 13 days for them left to do something to scupper Brexit.
How?
I don't know how, Joe. I don't know how, but you know that the breakup of the EU superstate and when you look at the big picture stuff, this is a huge spanner in their plan, man. A huge spanner.
Is it?
When you're wanting to create superstates and everything else, Joe, and you're wanting to divide the world up into this globalist thing, nation states standing on their own, that doesn't exactly fit the model. We should expect it, though, maybe, since we're still the British Empire. We might not be like sailing the seas the way we used to, but you can't tell me that the British establishment and the royal family aren't still very, very powerful people pulling a lot of the strings here. But now, why do you think they've tried to scupper it for so long, dude? Because they had no intentions. They didn't think for 1 minute that we would want to get out of there.
No. And I'm not saying that's the case, but they are quite satisfied oftentimes with 2 steps forward, 1 step back. They don't, as long as they're making progress, it's fine. If you look at
I think if they were going to do that, though, I think they would have pushed through the Brexit, got us out of there, and then rolled on to Plan B, as opposed to delaying it so long.
If that's the purpose, though, a lot of times this stuff, that divisiveness that they stoke, it's kind of like how Rahm Emanuel said, "No, never let a crisis go to waste." So here you kind of have a crisis going on.
Absolutely. But they've tried by hook and by crook, Joe. They've tried everything to get us back to the ballot box to do it all again.
Sure.
So if this was what they wanted, that wouldn't have been the big push. They don't want, yourself, you go through the timeline of the Illuminati, right? And you know how key the European aristocracy is in the formation of all of these plans.
Especially, UK has a special place there with the old bloodlines. They go way back.
That's what I'm talking about, dude. Things are changing, and we shouldn't be surprised. We're in this time of change. We talk about the apocalypse. We talk about things coming to the surface. We talk about plans going wrong, everything up in the air. And 13 days for something to go wrong. Yeah. Listen, folks, whatever happens, we'll wake up on the 14th day and we'll still have the same bills to pay. We'll still open the curtains and the world will look exactly the same.
It's going to be just fine.
Yes,
and people are going to be,
It won't be like Fortnite with a big meteor coming in and we'll all be left in Brexit limbo. Although some of the newspapers would have you believe that, Joe.
It's like Y2K. Remember that? Ooga booga, ooga booga. And then nothing.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be the end of the world, man. We were all going to die.
2012.
Yeah, exactly. 2012.
Elenin.
Yeah. There's a lot of them.
We've lived through a few of them, Joe.
And look, fizzle. That's all I'm going to say.
Not even a T-shirt to celebrate it. Terrible.
You do?
We
You
should
don't
have
have one?
We should have a T-shirt that says we're one for like we witnessed 2012 and survived. You know what I mean? We lived through Elenin and all we got is this shady T-shirt.
Stupid T-shirt.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, we could do that.
I think so.
Let's see what else we got in the grab bag. I don't even know what we have in the grab bag. What do you have in the you have anything in the grab bag?
Plenty in the grab bag, Joe. Plenty in the grab bag. Okay, let us go to this one. Here's quite interesting, right? Google executive says you should disclose to your house guests that you have smart home devices. Why? Because it's a wiretap. They're listening to everything. Not that we didn't know that. So it says in a few decades, it seems as if the whole world has turned into a recording studio. Isn't that true?
It's true.
Yep. If there aren't CCTV cameras filming overhead, it's likely some hidden phone app is quietly running in the background, tracking location data, or maybe even eavesdropping on a call. Yeah. Now, at a media briefing in New York this week, Google announced an update to its Nest branded line of smart home devices, which extend the web consultant surveillance into home with announcement of new Google Nest Mini and Google Nest Hub Max devices. It's one thing if Google customers want to turn their homes into always-on recording zones, but the devices prompt an interesting question. Do they have any obligation to their guests, who might not realise they're giving up a degree of privacy while having a glass of wine on the sofa? That's interesting, right? Because
yeah, sure is.
I mean, it could never, ever be used in court, I take it. You know, anything criminal that's picked up, right? Because...
Well, you wouldn't think so, but is that the purpose of it?
Are we going to have signs on our homes saying you're now being recorded?
But what if, okay, so like take, for example, Massachusetts. Massachusetts is a two-party state. So I don't consent. Now what? Are they going to stop? No.
If it was a really smart device, it would realize there's visitors in and it would just stop recording, right?
No, it would immediately tell everybody, almost like, ding, don't forget to fasten your safety belt, or ding, don't get out of the car until the ride comes to a complete stop. You know, it'd be like that. You know, maybe it should just do that. And the AI will just speak to you wherever you go.
I don't think there's any expectation of privacy anywhere, Joe.
No.
I
don't think so.
No, everything's been listened to. Everything's been looked at. And
God only knows they probably have a satellite up in space that can listen to you from like up there. I'm sure they've got something.
Why not? They've got cameras that can see up a spider's a-hole from space. So,
and the blimps.
Mm-hmm.
You know, somebody saw, I think it was Daily Star or something like that. They had an article about a cigar-shaped object up in the sky that somebody had taken a picture of. And there's all this talk about these blimps, these Department of Homeland Security or U.S. Army blimps that from 20,000 feet, you can hardly see these damn things. They don't make any noise. And they can basically tell who you are by the gait of your walk, the way you hold yourself, and also, you know, biometric data. It can see you from that high up and determine who you are based on the data that they have on you.
That's why I do the Quasimodo. That's why every 10 yards or so, I kind of change walks. It's like the Ministry of Silly Walks, Joe. One of them, I drag my leg and I don't know, hey, I'm skipping all the way down.
It's the Hong Kong mask thing with the protests, right? Only you're taking it that way too. Now you got to change up how you walk every 3 steps and make sure you don't use a pattern.
Yep, it's that sharp shoe shuffle on the way down to get the milk, you know.
It has to be totally and completely random. It's called encrypted walking.
Encrypted walking. I love it.
Yeah.
I tell you, dude,
right.
we're like the new Monty Python. We need to get like cameras in a studio and do this crap, dude. We need to do the new Ministry of Crazy Walks.
It is true, man.
Yep.
I think if we had a class on that, on encrypted walking, people would instantly understand how important it is to kind of vary up your repertoire, if you will, and confuse the AI. Because, of course, it's always looking for patterns.
Always. That's why you should always throw in there
be totally random.
The odd Google search of the mating ritual of an African orangutan. Yes, just throw that into the middle of a day of quantum searching, Joe. You want something exciting? I've just been told something exciting, dude. I am going to be on with the legend Clyde Lewis on Monday to talk about the Loch Ness Monster. Old zinger.
Out here. Are
Yes.
you going to dust off the old photos of you and on Nessie's back riding around?
Yes, the young apprentice goes and spends time in the shadow of the master. Bathed in the knowledge of Clyde Lewis, dude. Ground zero, here I come. Oh.
Are you going with him again?
Yeah, Monday. Monday, that'll be 8 till 10 Pacific time. So
Very nice. Very nice.
Oh, exciting times, Joe.
I have
Exciting
to
times.
imagine that you'll give a boost to the old Clivester's ratings just by nature of the accent.
I like Clyde,
powerful.
though, man. Big time. And he's up in that Pacific Northwest, Joe. And we were talking with myself and Scotty today. Remember you sent me the story about the cattle mutilation and things like that?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the Pacific Northwest. There's something about that area, dude. There's something...
It's got a lot of what they say is UFO activity.
Yep. You've got that Mount Shasta up that way as well.
Yep. So there's a lot of crazy stuff, but the cattle mutilation things, especially, when they're cut open so precisely, it's not a prank.
Well, what do you speculate then? Because I gave my thoughts earlier, but what do you speculate it is?
I don't. The only thing I can think of is maybe like a training op for that kind of advanced technology stuff. I don't know. I mean, I just don't.
Why wouldn't you just do it on cattle that the government have?
Yeah. See, I don't know. I don't know like what the background is or anything, or why they would do that.
It's weird though, right? So I've tried to think about it, I've tried to think all various angles, because who knows what's going on, dude. And I'm sure it's not just one answer, like we'll fit all of them.
No,
but
I don't think
it's
so
definitely
either.
something weird.
But think about it though. You've got this unbelievable totally random phenomenon, because these things are happening all over the world. So you're not even talking about just Oregon. I mean, it's happened in China, it's happened in Africa, it's happened in Europe, it's happened all over the world, these cattle mutilations. So you can't even say that to me, it would be kind of weird that it would be a government thing now that you think about it. So then what? Now what is it? So more likely than not.
But aliens is weird as well, because if you've got the technology to fly across stars systems.
What if they think that cows are the intelligence on the planet?
What if they're a bovine race themselves?
Like a bovine race of interdimensional beings.
Maybe cows are like sleeper cells.
Like
Maybe
centaurs. Like centaurs, dude.
Maybe the cows are here as like some kind of Trojan cow. Like they're here to monitor all of us.
Trojan cow.
Their farts.
No,
You see, this is it, Joe, right? Their farts aren't actually damaging the ozone layer. The reason they're catching their farts in bags, it's all a ruse, this ozone thing, is because that's actually a methane message that gets to the atmosphere and goes at light speed out to Cowzilla, the planet that these things are from. Yeah,
I could see
that. Honestly, dude, I know it. Do you know how I know it? I read it on Above Top Secret.
Of course. But if you consult the enamel tablets of tooth, you would see that centaurs were centaurs. Yeah. These centaur, if you will, are a hybrid bovine race that could very well have taken to the skies and are now coming back. I don't know. Here's the other crazy thing, too. Let me throw this at you. The shields are dropping, right? Do you think we're becoming more visible to perhaps beings that when the magnetic field was at full strength, they may not have been able to see or know we were here, or didn't have a way to maybe do this
for
kind
whatever
of stuff.
reason we've started glowing up on one of their telescopes.
Yeah, I don't know. It's crazy.
Maybe the quarantine. Maybe what we see is this magnetosphere. It's literally a quarantine fence.
You think so? Yeah, maybe so. Maybe so. Because I am not confident that we can live off planet. I don't know if
I
we
agree
have.
with you, Joe. I agree with you.
I just don't think we're built for
It
it.
would have to be a planet that identically matched this, right down to the Schumann resonance, right down
Yeah.
to the amount of daylight hours, the time it
Right
takes to
down,
revolve
but
around its local
then,
star.
well, even if you do this, right? So that is if you have like a Stargate that you can just walk through or something, or even short distance, you know. Oh, we'll be right back. We'll continue this on the other side. Okay.
There we go.
Yeah, it's where you have like a short distance, but if you have to travel, like for example, the way Musk envisions us going to Mars, and you have to have all that shielding, that even then you don't even know. We don't even know if that's going to shield us properly. I think that's why they're sending up some of these probes, is to measure the amount of radiation that they would be exposed to on that. And I think they already know that it's basically a one-way trip. I personally think it is. I don't know.
I think that physical travel like that, I think maybe we'll get to the stage where we can go throughout our solar system on big ships, maybe. But when you start talking about other star systems, interstellar, it can only be like the Stargate system. It's the best way to envision it. It really is.
I can't really see it any other way.
And I think, I
And-
mean, I know it sounds like the TV show, but it makes sense to me if there is like some ancient race out there that were space-faring and they went out and they were scientists and they were able to identify planets that fit their requirements, their standards for life, and then seed them with, the Stargate. And I can see how possibly something like that could be real. You hear about Stargates being found here way before it was popularized by the TV show. So I don't know.
The was it Navajo? I think Navajo Indians or the Apaches. I can't remember. Some of them. Well, they all talk about Stargates.
Yep. Mountains. Yep.
Yeah, and of course they're exactly that. They're the high points.
But it makes you wonder if all that electricity, that piezo electricity, the quartz, all that stuff, if that gives you the perfect kind of environment for a weakening, an opening in interdimensional gates. I don't know.
I think there's so much more to resonance, sound, and frequency that we don't even understand. We just don't.
I think if we did, that would answer a lot of stuff, and it would open up a whole new realm of physics.
Absolutely, it would.
Mhm.
I think so. But for some reason, we went down this path, the path that we're on now, and I think there's more evidence today than ever before that these ancient structures weren't built by primitive people with brass tools and things like that, that there was a much deeper story, a much more intelligent culture that existed, and also different races that weren't human.
Yep.
That's another thing to understand, that we weren't the only game in town. So it's it just surprises me.
I just took a drink of cold coffee. Nothing worse.
I know. It just surprises me that we choose to keep going down this road knowing full well that there's probably a better way to do it. But we just don't. Why? I don't get it.
Because we're stupid.
Stupid.
We're about to go back to the mothership. Remember, folks, head on over to tfrlive.com to continue listening after we're finished today. We'll also be back on Freaky Friday tomorrow. So lots to look forward to. And here we go, Joe. You're back now.
Yeah, this is good. The music is not good.
I love your music, man. It's like Stargate music. This is what you hear when you're flying at light speed.
Is that really what you hear?
Yeah. Do 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 do.
Ours kind of going. Okay, I got
And he
you.
laughs at my music. And he laughs at my music.
Oh, it's just awful.
I will take no more of your criticism, sir.
Righto. Oldthinkernews.com. I have our secret human experiments advancing brain chip technology.
Send me a link, Joda.
Of course I will.
This sounds interesting.
It is very interesting. There is your link, my friend. It says here, a doctor from Peru claims that recent advancement in brain chip technology could be due to secret, forced, and illicit human experimentation by a consortium of transnational tech companies and governments operating outside the law. A 2016 paper published in the Egyptian Journal of Internal Medicine warned that secret, forced, and illicit human experimentation could be happening in Latin America, where poverty-stricken masses are routinely recruited for medical trials.
Happens all the time, I bet.
I'm sure. I mean, Mengele was in South America for years doing stuff after the war.
Most of the medicine we've got today, Joe, would have started off with, you know, what would be regarded as unethical experimentation. Let's not be naive.
No, absolutely. It says here the paper titled The Secret of Neuroscience Boom. Are there secret human experiments in Latin America? Was written by Dr. David Flores, professor of medicine at Universidad Nacional Mayor de San Marcos, Peru. Man, they've got a ton of names.
They like their names, don't they?
They sure do. Dr. Flores writes, an objective analysis proposes as a possible explanation for the so-called neuroscientific boom the suspicion that transnational technological companies in illegal association with the U.S. government, the European community, China, and some Latin American governments are developing in Latin America illegal and forced secret neuroscience or neuroscientific human experimentation. Dr. Flores concludes by warning his colleagues to investigate, be alert, and report inhumane neuroscientific experiments performed by economic powers in third world countries. South America, of course, has served as a test site for unregulated offshore drug trials for the pharmaceutical industry for many years. Peru has been described as a paradise of human experimentation and is riddled with corruption. A former DOD official warned in 2006 that only the most ruthless nation will win the new arms race for human enhancement. Fred Clark Ickel, Undersecretary of Defense for Policy under President Reagan, wrote Annihilation from Within in 2006. In the book, Ickel wrote that only the most ruthless nation would win the arms race for brain chips and human augmentation because advancements in the technology could only come from intrusive experiments on living human brains.
True.
It's very true. Facebook, Google, IBM, and even Elon Musk have all heavily invested in projects related to human brain research and brain-computer interfaces. These tech companies have also made major moves to communist China. China made an announcement this year that many advancements were made in its research on brain-computer interfaces. Xinhua reports that BCI research with its first BCI chip Brain Talker making its debut on Friday at the ongoing World Intelligence Congress held in North China's Tianjin municipality. And DARPA's Brain Initiative, launched by Barack Obama in 2013, aims to, among other things, create full implantable, modular, and reconfigurable neural interface microsystems that communicate wirelessly with external modules.
Sounds good. Oh, yeah.
So, given the history of human experimentation by governments around the world, are we really surprised? Now, on this page, there's also a video from a 1995 congressional testimony that showcased victims of secret radiation and mind control experiments in the United States. They actually had mind control hearings. So if you want to watch that video, it's there. But Not
Is
surprised.
that like the church hearings? Is that what that is? No.
Well, the church committee was in the 70s.
Got you.
So
Got you, man.
so this is about 20 years after that. Yeah, so it's
That
totally
looks older than the 90s, dude, doesn't it?
it does.
Damn,
But-
the world's
but
moving too
no.
quickly, man.
World.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, buddy.
We are.
So I got to tell you, I'm not surprised. But at the same time, I really didn't consider.
I wouldn't want to be the first, and here's why. Because say you do weaponize a group of individuals, you perfect the brain chip, you turn them into super soldiers, and you start to think about rolling this out into the population,
Yeah.
you're very open to being hacked.
Oh, of course. I think that's a pivotal thing about getting these enhancements, if you will, out to the public is the fact that they can. Do you ever see when, your IT department or perhaps you're having an issue with your computer and the technician will log in remotely
Yep.
to your computer and do that. Now imagine if they can do that to this, why do you not think that they're not going to have that kind of capability to do that to your brain?
The only
Oh,
thing,
let me
the
go
only
in there.
thing, yeah, the only thing that might stop it, Joe, and I say might because there's always a workaround. Somebody always takes it further and defeats the encryption and things, but you would have to be on some kind of quantum encryption, literally, where you would need to have another quantum machine entangled with it to break this thing, because otherwise, it's like the autonomous cars as well. That's going to have to be quantumly encrypted, because imagine the catastrophe if somebody got into the network and started taking
look
over
what happens
cars.
now. People can hack cars as they're driving down the road. They steal cars these days. They sell these devices that
Yep.
basically can trigger the fob, and they don't need the fob.
Yeah,
They just
if they're close enough, they can basically receive the signal when somebody uses the fob one time.
Yep.
And then they kind of pattern match that. They get the frequency, and then from there, once you've got the frequency, away you go.
that's it.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting. And then of course down in South America, you have such poverty that they can do that kind of stuff. Yeah,
and hey, listen, I'm sure it goes on in some American cities. I'm sure it goes on in British cities as well. There's a lot of people that nobody would notice if they go missing. And it's a horrible thing to say. In a world of 7.5 billion, you'd think we'd all have somebody. But unfortunately, these people, who notices? If they were to go missing, nobody would, Joe. Nobody would. So it's not as if there's not enough, I hate to talk about it this way, but specimens for them out there to experiment on.
It's very, very true. Absolutely true. So I couldn't agree with you more, Kev, on that one.
Yeah.
So what else do we have? And as I grab back,
What else do we have here? Let me check.
I'm pulling up some.
Oh, that you'll
stuff.
like this, Joe.
Okay.
California rolls out its first ever statewide earthquake app called My Shake that gives residents a heads up when they need to drop cover and hold on. Now, this comes a day after Michael Snyder, End of the American Dream. He wrote about an earthquake swarm that had people worried up in San Francisco. But as I pointed out, not all earthquake swarms are precursors to something happening. And in this case, there had been a sizable quake, and we were looking at aftershocks. But when it comes to California, dude, you're the master of it. You put the fear of goodness into Nano Girl anytime you talk to her. But she's actually turned round now, and she said, you know what, Joe, you might be right. Maybe the big one is coming.
It's coming. There's no
Drop cover and hold on. Yeah. What else can you tell people to do, though, eh? Really?
Well, in that sense, yeah, you're absolutely right. I would just build an ark personally.
I would just run out into the middle of a field. Probably my luck, it would crack open in the field.
Crack open and swallow you.
Probably
I was just
would.
going to say that, yeah.
And then I'll end up in Inner Earth.
Yeah.
With people where I will be giant. And in the land of 4-foot people, I can be king, Joe.
Could you imagine if that was the case and like you landed and there's a T-Rex there just ready to eat you?
T-Rex and a couple of hobbits having a joint.
Hobbits having a joint.
And the T-Rex is having a smoke with them with really funny little arms and things. I don't know how it gets the smoke up, but it does it.
I could totally see that. Hey, get this activist post, right? I want to talk about this a little bit because this is funny. You know how we talk about 5G and how we always want more of an unbiased type of analysis of things with it? Well, the Electronic Frontier Foundation recently released a Why Fiber to the Home is vastly superior to cable and 5G, and how greed is dictating that Americans don't get it. And now that's very true. Now, it says here, although fiber optics with a wired internet connection has been touted by some as being completely safe, and it is because it's only light, there are Americans still experiencing adverse health effects after it's been installed in homes and neighborhoods. A wired internet connection using a copper landline still seems to be the biologically safest option. However, this isn't available everywhere anymore. So fiber to home without small cells attached is definitely a safer option to fiber with small cells attached. However, this option is more expensive for telecoms to provide, so they don't want to do it. Unfortunately, the embarrassingly corrupt Federal Communications Commission, along with many American elected officials, are still catering to the telecoms despite increasing 5G lawsuits, oppositions, and warnings. So, the United States, it says here, its states and its local government are in dire need of universal fiber plans. It says here, major telecom carriers such as AT&T and Verizon have discontinued their fiber to home efforts, leaving most people facing expensive cable monopolies for the future. And while much of the internet infrastructure has already transitioned to fiber, a super majority of households and businesses across the country still have slow and outdated connections. Transitioning the last mile into fiber will require a massive effort from industry and government, an effort the rest of the world has already started. Unfortunately, arguments by U.S. telecom industry that 5G or currently existing DOCSIS cable infrastructure are more than up to the task of substituting for fiber have confused lawmakers, reporters, and regulators into believing that we don't have a problem. In response, EFF has recently completed extensive research into the currently existing options for last mile broadband and lays out what the objective technical facts demonstrate. And by every measurement, fiber connections to homes and businesses are by far the superior choice for the 21st century. It's not even close. It says here as a baseline, there's a divide between wireline internet like cable and fiber and wireless internet like 5G. Cable systems can already deliver better service to most homes and businesses than 5G wireless deployments because the wireline service can carry signals farther with less interference than radio waves in the air. It's been written about the differences between wireless and wireline internet in the past. And while 5G is a major improvement over previous generations of wireless broadband, cable internet will remain the better option for the vast majority of households in terms of both reliability and raw speed. Gigabit and faster wireless networks have to rely on high-frequency spectrum in order to have sufficient bandwidth to deliver those speeds. But the faster the speed and the higher the frequency, the more environmental factors such as the weather or physical obstructions interfere with the transmission. Gigabyte 5G uses millimeter wave frequencies, which can travel through doors, or that can't travel through doors or walls. In essence, the real-world environment adds so much friction to wireless transmissions at high speed that any contention that it can replace wireline internet fiber or cable, which contend with few of those barriers due to insulated wires, is suspect. And meanwhile, fiber systems have at least a 10,000-fold advantage over cable systems in terms of raw bandwidth. This translates into a massive advantage for data capability, and it's why scientists have been able to squeeze more than 10 terabits or 100 terabits per second down a single fiber. That's some bandwidth, dude. 100 terabits a second on one fiber. Nuts. The most advanced cable technology has achieved max speed of around 10 gigabits in a lab. Cable has not and will not come close to fiber. Fiber also has significantly less latency and fewer problems with dropped packets and will be easier to upgrade in the future. So the American story of broadband deployment is a tragic one, where your income levels determine whether you have competition and affordable access. In the absence of a national coverage policy, low-income Americans and rural Americans have been left behind. And it stands to get worse, absent a fundamental commitment to fiber for everyone. Case in point, when we lived down in North Carolina, Kev, not a half mile down the road, people didn't have telephone. People didn't have internet. And the cell signal was awful. They called it a technology dead zone. The only thing they had was power. That was it.
Damn, dude.
Yeah. So, I mean, places still exist where you don't even have phone lines, not even copper phone lines. And
it's almost like living out of time.
Well, because it's simply a matter of greed and practicality too. You know, the fact that if they're going to deploy that kind of equipment and resources, they want to be able to get enough money coming in to cover it. But when your population in rural areas are so spread out, there's not the revenue that they're looking for to come in to justify the expense.
I've lived it, dude. Fort Augustus, you know, they were the last area in the UK to get Channel 4 back in the day. We only had 3 channels, then Channel 4 came along. But because of that very reason, only a population of 800, it would cost them millions to get the transmitter up there. They eventually did. But yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. So it doesn't have to be like this. There's absolutely no good reason we have to accept the current situation as the future. A fundamental refocus, they say, on competition, universality, and affordability by local, state, and federal governments is essential to get our house back in order. Policymakers doing anything short of that are effectively concluding that having slower, more expensive cable as your only choice for the gigabit future is an acceptable outcome. And then this great piece here has a bunch of videos on what's going on here in America with regards to 5G and some of the things that are happening there. And if you look at that graphic, it's pretty interesting that fiber has just so much more throughput than anything else. I mean, look at the difference.
Yep.
So, and what are you guys running over in the UK now? Did they do fiber everywhere?
Hang on. Yeah. Well, not everywhere yet, but
that's the goal, isn't it?
Yeah. This is gonna really annoy you if I do this.
It's okay. Go ahead.
Go for it.
Are you
You
doing
sure?
a speed test?
Here we go. We'll see. We see it'll let me down tonight. It won't be a good one. Connecting. There you go. 350, 360, 370, 380, 390 nearly there. Not bad, Joe. Not bad. And then 30
Yeah.
up. Hey, that's what happens when you live. That's what happens when you live in a smart city.
But also, look at your latency.
Mm-hmm.
It's very good. I mean, it's not, you don't have a lot of latency.
No.
And that's what's so pivotal, they say, especially when you start talking about smart devices.
Well, you think about autonomous cars and things, latency's a hell of an issue.
Could you imagine? I mean, think about that. How do you compensate for something you don't know, right? If this thing is communicating with a server or something like that, or the
any lag between these cars talking to each other,
is
dude.
fatal.
Yep.
How do you do that? I mean, you're going to have latency. There's no doubt. And 4 milliseconds, I don't think that's going to cause you to wreck. But you could see, like, for example, and this is why 5G, aside from the physical aspect of things, that frequency is very subject to interference. It is susceptible to interference, meaning that it doesn't take much to lower or increase your packet errors. And once you start getting a ton of packet errors, your data rates drop. And when your data rates drop, your latency increases. And if it increases enough, that could absolutely happen where, maybe it's bad enough to where it would cause an accident. I don't know. And that's just one aspect of so many. Banks and investment houses are spending billions and billions and billions of dollars in infrastructure. Just as a matter of fact, they're laying fiber lines. Individual banks are laying fiber lines from Wall Street to Chicago just to gain a millisecond of, and sometimes less than that, because that millisecond means millions of dollars in investment. I mean, it's
Joe,
unbelievable.
it's well taken away now from the traditional kind of stockbroker on the desk and things, and it's AI algorithms. They're doing the micro trades, as they call them, just ahead of the curves, because they're basically predicting the future trend of the market because they've got that much data.
What does that say about the future of banksters and these financial advisors? I just don't.
I don't see how it's sustainable. I don't see why you would go to somebody who's, and no criticism to the very best stockbroker out there, but you're not going to be as fast as an AI.
Well, that's my point. Is that they're already obsolete.
Yeah.
Here they are doing this kind of stuff because they need milliseconds. And
well, there's a TV show, Billions, and I know people hate it when I refer to it, but this gives a good example. And these guys, the main character in it, Bobby Axelrod, he's the king of the street. He's making billions, Joey. Everyone wants to be him. But even he recognizes the importance of going to the geeks, because throughout the series, it's people writing algorithms that are really starting to have an impact on his business, because it's the new way. And you see these big companies, and remember, these TV shows, they try and keep them as close to like the real world as they can, and they do research to keep it like, continuity, stuff like that. Point being, these companies are way ahead of it. They know exactly what route this is going in. And I said it a few years ago, any companies that don't adopt AI, they're going to be left behind, Joe. Absolutely left behind, because their competitors that do adopt AI, even if it's just to streamline their logistics, the way they get orders out, it's going to take them on leaps and bounds to the point where other businesses are just fall by the wayside.
Look at what happened with Amazon. Amazon promises 2-day shipping. Unbelievable. People now expect that as the norm. So what do? Now it's 1-day shipping.
Same day.
Now 2-day takes too long. Now 1 day is the norm. Well, now they're doing same-day shipping.
Yep.
See how that happens? And so you're absolutely right. As more and more people adopt this, it's going to hasten things, as far as the ability to do things better, faster, more efficient. That old way, you're going to be left behind.
That's why that Moore's law, it's redundant now. That technology doubling in power every so long. Because now you got quantum computers and AI.
Yeah, how do you even measure that, right?
You don't.
It's so unbelievable how fast. I mean,
how fast 5 hours of radio and streaming has gone for me today.
That's very good.
The blink of a quantum eye, Joe.
How many members do we need?
5 now? Only 5? We only need 5.
5 more to the next emoji.
Yeah.
To 3 hands.
Yeah. Yep.
Very nice.
5 more, my friend. 5 more. That's all we need till we get the 80 hand.
We got Freaky Friday.
Yeah.
Freaky Friday tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. I think it's midnight in the UK.
So technically, it's a strange Saturday.
Yeah, strange Saturday.
Yeah. But it's always a Freaky Friday.
Yeah.
Big thank
Safe
you to everyone that's tolerated us for the past.
And
3
of
hours.
course, you've got safe space tomorrow.
I do have the Friday safe space where I won't be triggering people. I promise you, I won't be bringing any trigger bait to the safe space tomorrow.
You triggered them today.
Yeah, ManPon's done it.
I can't believe it.
Yeah.
That would trigger me too.
Men on their period. I was watching like the most usually calm and tranquil women getting triggered in the chat. Who knew, Joe, right? This triggers women. You know, you can like take their makeup, you can start dressing like them, but if you try and steal their right to have a period, oh boy,
My God,
nasty.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
I can't even believe that would even be a fight.
Yeah, but big shout out before we go to the lesbian penguins that are adopting the genderless chick. Have at it.
Very nice. Very noble.
Penguin identities matter. We're out of here.
Yes, we are.
Yes, indeed, folks. So
Yes, we are.
that was absolutely fantastic. I hope you all enjoyed that. It was only going to be 2 hours. In fact, earlier on today, I didn't even know if I was going to do a show at all when I'd done the safe space, and now I do 3 hours. So.
Very nice.
Exactly.
So
And we'll be back tomorrow, Joe, yes?
absolutely. I can't wait, my man. I can't wait.
Okay, good stuff. I'll play us out with 30 seconds of music, and then
Fantastic, lovely music.
Oh, you like this music. You're going to like this stuff. You'll like this one, Joe. I know you won't, but you'll like it anyway. This is the music that they force on penguins when they're young. It confuses them.